Battle Masters is back as Battle Monsters. Dark Tower is back in print. Hero Quest is back on store shelves. Star Wars Jedi Duels has been upgraded to Unmatched. And a new version of Codenames was just announced. Tonight, we're talking about board games that were rebooted and given new life.
Unfortunately, we don't really have anything ready to review that fit that theme. That would have been a cool tie-in, but we don't really have a lot of reboots to review right now in the pile of obligations. So instead, I decided to pick a couple games we've been enjoying lately. Two games that have a little bit more meat than what we've been reviewing lately. We've been reviewing a lot of party games, lighter games, and I thought it would be nice to dive into some heavier stuff for the heavy game fans out there. So those two games are Earth from Inside Up Games and Genotype from Genius Games.
Plus, we're also going to be talking about what we've been playing lately, including first thoughts on three new to us games, Floristry, Azul Duel, and Julius Caesar.
Before all that, we'd better let people know who we are. I'm Sean, your host, and with us we have Deanna, the editor and webmaster.
Hey to all the bellhop boarders.
And Mo, the tabletop bellhop himself.
I am Mo Tuzano, the tabletop bellhop, your cardboard concierge, working with you to make your game nights better.
We aim to record on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern, live at twitch.tv/tabletopbellhop. And when you jump in and get on the hype train, you can join us. We love it when people join us in the lobby, our chat room.
Okay, before we get going, a little bit of housekeeping. First, disclosure. Wherever you're consuming this, any links you see are most likely affiliate links, which cost you nothing extra but help support the show. You can find detailed show notes for this episode over at tabletopbellhop.com/episode 275. That's 275. And I do mean detailed show notes. We list every game we talk about with links to where you can find a copy or find more info on it. They're pretty lengthy. Finally, I want to acknowledge that this episode exists because of the support of our awesome Patreon patrons.
And our Twitch subscribers.
Some quick announcements before we move on to answering one of your gaming and game night questions. First up, we will not be recording next week, June 4th, as I'm out of town that day, so no live show and no new podcast dropping on the 9th.
Second, just a reminder for the Windsor Detroit locals that our first ever free public play game night at the Cookie Bar is scheduled for Thursday, June 5th, and I hope to see a bunch of you out.
The Tabletop Bellhop team is here to answer your gaming and game night questions. Tonight's question comes from longtime fan and local Windsor gamer, Eggman Jr., who asks, what do you think about the reimagining of older games into new games that keep the theme but update the mechanics like Restoration Games does? Do you enjoy that? What would you like to see more games be updated?
Well, thanks for the great question, Eggman, and for being a fan of the show. I dig it. I like this question. It's kind of interesting. Especially the more I thought about it, the more different aspects of the question I was coming down to. Now, one of the things I thought was interesting is you specifically called out Restoration Games about keeping the theme and updating the mechanics, because they do that, which is totally legit. And for some games, that's exactly what they did, right? Fireball Island, you're still dropping marbles down a plastic island and trying to collect things, and crossbows and catapults. It's pretty much the same thing. Thunder Road was completely revised, but you're still battling on roadways and rolling dice to move. And Dice Tower's a stretch. Dice Tower, Dark Tower. Sorry. Dark Tower's a stretch because Dark Tower, they completely changed it from a competitive game to a cooperative game with an AI tower. But the core thing, the tower, is still there. But then other games, they changed around like completely. Like they're almost not recognizable as their original games. And I think the best example of that is what they did was with Unmatched. Because Unmatched, and a lot of people I've noticed don't even know this, was originally Star Wars Jedi Duels, which is something that came out like when the original prequel series came out. And the only reason I know about Star Wars Jedi Duels is a local gamer and his son are obsessed with this game and made up their own units and ended up making up rules for every single different action figure out there and stuff, and kind of went hardcore with it. But like most people kind of missed that game because, you know, the episode 1 hype kind of, you know, where it went. And then currently they have the newest redo of Battle Masters, which is the classic Games Workshop Warhammer Milton Bradley mashup of playing Warhammer on a giant mat on your porch, is being redone as battle monsters. So it's kind of interesting to see, like calling out Restoration in particular, because they don't just publish old games identical with new mechanics. They also completely revise and start over from scratch almost on some of these games. And like I said, to the point that to me, some of them are like unrecognizable as the original games.
But like in the case of Unmatched, it's almost the opposite. They keep the gameplay and mechanics and they dump the theme, right? And that made me think of like Shogun versus Wallenstein, right? Like it's they kept the core mechanics and just changed the theme.
See, what I don't know is actually how close the two are. From what I understood with Star Wars Jedi was it wasn't as close to Unmatched, but I don't know. I don't have enough experience with either game.
Yeah.
To me, I think this game, this question really comes to sort of that second part of it. So it's the games where, yes, it's Dark Tower, but it isn't the Dark Tower you knew before. It's a new game, but it's Dark Tower, or it's the racing game. And yes, everyone loved Thunder Road, but it was a horrible game. So let's keep the theme and make it a good game and things like that. That was really what I was feeling for this question.
And if you have any complaints with Sean calling Thunder Road a horrible game, you can send your email to Sean at tabletopbellhop.com. It's a fantastic game. I have it downstairs. It was great for the time.
You just need to tie Sean to a chair and make him play it again.
There you go.
For the time. There's the keywords.
Yes.
Did you play it? Did you play Most Copy as a kid? Because y'all grew up together.
I didn't have it as a kid. We bought that in London in an antiques mall.
Yeah, okay.
I
forgot that we got that as adults, honestly.
Yeah, we got that as adults. And it's technically missing one of the die you roll that gives you bonus speed if you're on a road. Anyway.
I remembered. Anyways.
Yeah. As for updates, like honestly, plain and simple, like what do I think of them? I think it's awesome. Like I think it's fantastic. I love it. To me, it's great to see new life being breathed into old games. And like not just the Restoration, like Restoration obviously is the company that kind of built itself around doing this, but like Renegade Games now has been scooping up old licenses and making deals with Hasbro and are now reprinting, re-releasing and updating a lot of the classic Avalon Hill games like Axis and Allies, Robo Rally, one of my favorite games of all time. And of course, their big baby right now is Heroescape. I cannot believe the amount of expansions they are pumping out for this like plastic miniature game. And then even like Hasbro is doing it on their own. This was a little while back, but like one of their most popular games of all time was Star Wars: The Queen's Gambit, which again came out at that prequel episode 1 came out and everyone kind of went nuts for it. And then it bombed and the games kind of disappeared off shelves. So the people who got it got really lucky. Well, they actually re-released that as Star Wars Risk, which is another one of those where a lot of people don't realize it's actually a re-theme of Queen's Gambit. And I just think it's great that people get to continue to enjoy these great games. And for the most part, the new versions are even better than the original. So you still get the feel of those original games, but with modern mechanics.
Risk Legacy. Done. No, I love that Renegade is picking up those old Avalon Hill licenses. That kind of geeks me out.
Yeah, I think what Restoration is doing is great. There are, however, some other games out there, quote unquote classics from our youth there that people keep trying to redo and put their new twist on and update that don't always work. A perfect example that I have talked about and no one should ever try and find for a large number of reasons actually is the Harry Potter Clue, where they added in player elimination into the game. Yay.
Mm-hmm. Now, another aspect of this, it's not exactly what Eggman's talking about, but I think also is part of this rebooting board games is new printings of old games that do change things, that improve on the original. Of course, there's all like the deluxe editions of games. There's a ton of those coming out. A lot of really popular games came out 10, 20, 5 years ago and are just hitting anniversaries now, and they're doing these epic editions or deluxe editions. And most of these tend to have new rules. They usually have improved components, sometimes new gameplay. And I've noticed the most recent trend is throwing in one new expansion just to get those people who collected it all before to still want it because it's got that one thing that you wouldn't have otherwise.
I kind of hate that. Yeah,
I can't decide what I think about that, to be honest. I really can't. And then just like an example of one we saw at Gamma Expo that actually Deanna got to play the original recently at Adam was Cyclades Legendary Edition, Or there's like the updated version of Galaxy Trucker is a good example of this one to me, because it actually added new mechanics to it. It actually changed it. Or a game we reviewed recently, Survive the Island, which is an update of Survive Escape from Atlantis, with the new publisher, Zygomatic, who did change up some things. Another example is the new printing of World's Fair from Renegade that adds some diversity to the game. And of course, Hasbro's re-release of HeroQuest that now has more content than I could have dreamed of when I was a teenager and obsessed with that game.
So this is where I think we're drifting a little bit from the original question here. I mean, HeroQuest is just HeroQuest. They reprinted. They Xeroxed the original instructions, for God's sakes, and threw them into the box. There really weren't any changes. Now, yes, we are getting new expansions to it, but the mechanics of HeroQuest are just HeroQuest. It's the exact same game. Even World Fair, and they added some diversity in there, and that was well needed. Let me tell you. But I don't think mechanically they actually changed the game at all, did they?
There was a little tiny bit of rebalancing on, I think, 2 of the cards or something like that. Yeah, it was very. It was
such a slight tweak that I didn't feel like that was a new edition at all. Like it was they were going to do a reprint. I love that they updated the art and added some diversity to it, but I don't actually think it fits the nature of the question.
Fair enough. And then interesting, like we're talking about new releases. Just before we went live, there is a new edition of Agricola coming out. I forget what they called it. Deluxe. It wasn't Deluxe. It was Essential Edition of Agricola coming out from a new publisher again. That looks absolutely fantastic. And yesterday, when I was working on the show notes for this show, CGE announced dropped the bomb of a new 10th anniversary edition of Cone Dames, which I got to say, the cover of the new Cone Dames so destroys the old one. Like, talk about presence when you're in a game store. Now, that just got announced, so I have no idea if they've changed the rules to Code Names at all or if they added new cards, but I was just like surprised by it. Or another one that we weren't allowed to talk about and was eating at me is while we were at Gamma Expo, I happened upon a box that I opened up, and it was called Quacks, and it was a new printing of Quacks at Quedlinburg. Again, I don't know what changed, but that was another one that just came back up.
Like
but that new version
the cover art is different. They changed up some of the art, right? And now it's called
Quacks. A new theme. It's a new theme. It's no longer a medieval fair and people brewing potions. It's something. It's animals somehow.
Oh, okay. It's more difference than I thought.
They removed the medieval theme from it.
Interesting.
Now, another thing that I think is kind of interesting with this topic that is just, while working on the show notes for this, and I was doing some things, and I was on Board Game Geek, and I remembered at the top of every game at Board Game Geek, you can often find re-implemented by or re-implements. And I can't believe the number of times I'm completely surprised to find out that a game I enjoy is actually a retheme, right? I'll go to log my play, or I'll be trying to grab the info for a review on a like the designer's name or how to spell the artist's name or something. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is actually an update. Most recently, I remember that happening when we were working on our Skyrockets Festival of Fire review. I had no clue Kites was a game. I had no idea that flipping sand timers and trying to keep them going was done before. Now it ends up same designer, but that's definitely a re-implementation, a reboot of Kites, changing it to a competitive or a cooperative game for one, and then also having goals and stories. Like, it was a complete reworking. And then I've also had the opposite happen, where I go to log a play for a game and find out that it's been re-implemented. I'm like, oh, there's a new version of this. I didn't know there was a new version of this. An example of that was Attica, which is a really neat older Rio Grande game I really liked, that I guess was reprinted as U.S. Telegraph and completely rethemed from ancient Greece and connecting roads to making telephone lines.
Like, I love Attica. If I logged my plays, that'd probably be one of the ones that I've played the most times. I sat and played it a lot with my sister, and I was excited when I found it because it's out of print. I don't need the other edition. I'm quite happy with mine, but I was happy that I could tell people it existed again. And then I think U.S. Telegraph, and I'm saying existed again in quotes because I think U.S. Telegraph is now also out of print. So I need someone to retheme it a third time.
There you go.
And just a note, not only Codenames, but Codenames Duet, and soon to be released Codenames Pictures.
Yep.
But as far as I can tell, other than the design, art, box inserts, etc., the word list has been updated, but the rules haven't apparently.
No change. I was wondering if there was going to be any tweaks to the rules.
I haven't specifically said, but what I'm getting from all their PR wording is they've updated the word lists for various reasons, which may probably improves the game in that way, but they haven't actually changed rules.
All right. I don't. Whatever. We're not here to discuss code names. It should have been one game with both ways to play. That's what I wish they'd done with
3
code
games.
names.
So,
well, it was always 3. There was always codename pictures before, so it's just another reprint. No, just overall, I think it's cool. I think it's awesome. I'd love to see more of it. There are games I would love to see reprinting. I reprinted in various ways and updated, and direct reprints don't interest me as much, especially because I've been collecting games for a very long time. So a lot of these games that are getting reprinted, I don't care because I've got the originals. But give me something more. That's what I want. Is I don't just give me like, okay, there's the deluxe edition. Give me all deluxe components. I kind of like that. I can see going for that. Like the new deluxe Castles Burgundy definitely tempts me, but I would like it better if there's at least something extra in there. One common thing we've been seeing is you get the original game, but now you get the solo rules, or if it was competitive, there's now cooperative rules, or the other way around. I dig seeing things like that when I get board game upgrades or reboots. And the only problem I have with any of this, though, and I've talked about this before, and I know it's 100% a me thing, is whenever a new version of a game comes out, and I've got the old version, I stop playing the old version. It somehow feels lesser. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to play this. This is the old version. There's a new shiny version. I don't have the shiny version. I don't want to play this. And I don't know. It's something stuck in my head, right? Now, this isn't so much for the stuff I had as a kid that came back out, right? Like, that's completely different. Like, my version of Thunder Road's such a different game from the new one. I still like my version of Thunder Road. But, like, the newer stuff, like Cicadi's Legendary Edition is an example of that. Like, when that came out, I'm like, okay, it looks like they did some neat things, but I guess my Cyclades is no good anymore. Or the new version of Galaxy Trucker. Like, I got the new version of Galaxy Trucker, and they did some really cool stuff with it. I don't know. Now I don't want to play my old version of Galaxy Trucker. I'm missing that one. And I know it's totally fine if you choose to update, right? Like, if I buy the new version, there, I can sell the old one. Or if we get a review copy, that happens. But I don't often go out and buy the new revised editions. I just stop playing my old ones.
That's the part that drives me batty. Like, it's not that you're like, well, now that I have the new version, this one is inferior. You're like, now that the new version merely exists, this one is inferior. Like, that is definitely a you problem. Have you considered talking to a therapist?
Not about that.
We're not living inside, like, I have argued this with you for years. We are not living inside some console system. I am not in an N64. The old game is still compatible with this version of reality.
I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what it is. But it's a thing. Like it's happened every time a new version of a game comes out. I stop playing the old one.
Well, and I think the real problem is, especially when you don't know, is new versions aren't always better.
True.
There are instances, especially with older games, where things are re-released. Things come out and they revamp them and they tweak and they fix and they have made a better version that is not a better game at all. Insert one of 1,000 different USopoly and Monopoly versions. Sorry, USopoly. We love you guys. We love a lot of your games, but a lot of your Monopoly re-themes just aren't really cutting it.
No, I agree. Yeah, and that's like a totally different topic. I don't know what's the difference between a reboot and a re-theme, and where it falls in like that. All the different versions of Clue, all the different versions of Monopolies, are those reboots? I guess they are.
Well, I think the big thing is when it changes again. Like the question says, when it changes the mechanics. So, like when you get to Monopoly, and all of a sudden you get rid of the money and you use the electronic debt payments, or the Mario Kart version of Monopoly that's got some different mechanics in there. Whereas if you're just slapping another college name or another city name on your game,
it's a direct port repaint. Yeah.
Best board game repaints. Well, we'll do that episode.
No more Monopoly.
So I don't know. What about you guys? What do you guys think of reboots? Like, I shared my thoughts. What do you guys think? Well,
okay, I got into this later in my notes, but I was also thinking of like that line between, like, okay, for example, there's a new edition of Tokaido that Stonemeyer's putting out, right? And it includes solo rules plus some quality of life tweaks like reference cards. But at what point is that a new edition? And particularly when companies go under, like say TMG. So we got Yokohama Duel picked up by Synapses, and it's coming out with all new artwork and refined rules. And I have no clue what's changed. It's listed on BGG as the same game. So I feel like that could be an entire debate, an entire episode where we try and figure out, like, what is the difference between a reboot and a reprint, or is this a second printing? What's going on? I don't even know. That's an entirely lengthier discussion than I wanted to get into.
Yeah, because a lot of these games, if you're just, look, all new components, a box insert, and one of the expansions that used to be separate is now included in the box. That's not yes, that's great. And I'm not saying don't buy it. I'm not saying don't buy it. I'm not saying don't enjoy it, especially for new people to the game. But it isn't really changing anything. The game plays exactly the same if you had the old version versus the new version. But then when all of a sudden it's like, oh, we've introduced an app to run the gameplay for you. Okay, well, that's different. That's changing things significantly. Or it's been called out in the chat room already, some of the Gloomhaven to Frosthaven changes, right? They made some adjustments and rule updates with the retheme of the game that you can actually backport into the other game, which is even, that's rare enough outside of the Gloomhaven world. But that's an awesome sort of improvement to mechanics, when you can take those same mechanics and bring them into other games you've had. Yeah.
And it's interesting you brought up the app one, because there are instances where they did that, but it's not a new version of the game. Like Star Wars Imperial Assault was out for, I think, 2 years. And all of a sudden they made an app to drive the game, so you didn't have to play one versus many. And it's a totally new way to play the game. But there wasn't a new game to buy. There was no box to buy. You just downloaded the app and used your existing game. Which I don't even know
Clank
how that's
as well.
listed on
If you've got
Board Game
Clank,
Geek.
you can always download the app and get extra stuff from Clank.
Yep.
I didn't even know that.
All right. I know it's not part of Eggman's question, and we've already mentioned a bunch of these games already, but I just kind of wanted to list off some of at least my favorite games that have been updated that kind of fit this. Now, the first one, I realize I'm kind of cheating, but that's okay, because I like to include this on lists, and that's Eclipse Second Dawn for the Galaxy. Because I loved Eclipse, and honestly, back when I was enjoying Eclipse, if you said, what would you do to make this game better? I'd be like, I don't know, it's perfect. Let's just go include the expansions in the box, so I don't have to go spend money to buy cool looking ships, But like, not only does Second Dawn make the game look prettier, which is cool but not needed, it gave you a big box to hold everything, which is again cool but not needed, but it actually tweaked the rules. It streamlined the game a bit. It did address some of the overpowered combos people had figured out with the tech tiles. Missiles no longer just win the game every time you play. You don't just put the most missiles on your ship to win. Like, it had everything I wanted from an update. And yes, this is not a Restoration Games update, but you know what? It's one of my favorite games of all time. And if Deanna can do it with Zensu, I'm going to do it with Eclipse Second Dawn.
Wait, do I get to slip in Zensu? Is there some new rethemed version out that I haven't heard about?
Or maybe the other way around. Isn't Zensu just kind of like, what is it, Shobu, the Japanese chess game? It's kind of a variant. Is it a retheme of Shogi? Now one that we already called out earlier is World's Fair 1893. The reason I think this deserves to be on the list is just because of the fact it happened that they did it. This was an issue where fans pointed out a problem with the game that the designer and publisher were like, oh, wow, we never even thought of that. It didn't enter our mind. We didn't even consider it. Man, egg on our face, and then did something to fix it. And that's why I think it deserves to be centered out, because it's one of the best area majority games out there, like second only to like El Grande. It's just such a fantastic game with great card mechanics. The game's just as good, and they re-released it. They took a chance to make it look better. They upgraded the components. They put it in a pretty new box, and they diversified the game. They made some little minor rule tweaks, but then they also dropped the price point to make the game more accessible. I don't know if that's enough to consider it a full reboot, but I want to call it out as something where the company went, well, yeah, we messed that up and fixed it. And that's why I think it's an awesome reboot.
I'll give it to you. I remember I really liked the write-up that they had added to the rule book to incorporate some of the historical stuff. Yeah. It's a reprint. And where's the line between a reprint and a reboot? And again, I'm not going down the rabbit hole.
Now, one came up wasn't on my initial list, but I thought of it again while working on something else. I had Board Game Geek open and I was trying to find some links. Was Artemis Odyssey, which we reviewed not too long ago. This was from our former sponsor, Grand Gamers Guild, that I really like. And it's a great example of a reboot of Ad Astra, which was originally published by Stronghold Games in that, 10 years ago time frame. With the new version does include rule tweaks, but this is one of the games I wanted to add it on because it specifically does the stuff I mentioned earlier, where it includes solo play, which was not part of the original game. The original game, there's some area majority, so it required 3 players. Well, they put in variant rules for 2 players that work really well, which I think is fantastic. And then they made it look pretty. They gave you plastic ships, and they used Hobbit-sized cards and all the other stuff. And I honestly think Artemis Odyssey is a great example of a company bringing an out-of-print game back into print because the original publisher no longer had the license.
And shining it up in a way that they're actually making it better. Yeah, that's a great one, and I hadn't thought of it at all. Good catch.
So these guys are going on about a lot of great ones. And to be honest, I think they covered it really well. So I'm going to go kind of the other way and drop in some of the duds, the bummers out there. And so we are huge fans of Dice Towers. Games like Shogun, Wallenstein, the fantastic ones. And then they went out there and re-implemented it by making Immortals.
Sean, I wanted to love that game. I really wanted to love that game. I tried so hard.
It was instead a knife fight in a telephone booth. It was just a bad game. And it makes you wonder. Like I would hate to be someone who has played Immortals and goes, oh, wow, these come from Shogun and Wallenstein, and then be scared of Shogun and Wallenstein because they played Immortals. That would hurt me. Because as much as they really aren't my favorite games, the way they are Moe's, I do respect the intricacy and the excellence in Shogun and Wallenstein that was completely taken and destroyed in the making of Immortals.
And I even mentioned Wallenstein earlier, and Immortals did not come into my mind because I think I've cleansed it from my brain.
I'm amused. I kind of still liked it, but I adore the original. So there were parts of that I actually still liked. But yes, that was not the best, and it's kind of ironic because the next thing I was going to bring up is more Queen games. So good segue there, Sean, unintentionally. The entire Steffenfeld City collection from Queen Games. That is a perfect example of older classic games being rebooted, redesigned graphically, then also being redeveloped as games. Steffenfeld sat down and replay tested, redeveloped, and redid these games to make them the best versions of themselves, then re-released them under new names. So I adore the City collection so far, some games more than others, but I think that is a fantastic example of this being done right. Yes, there might be some licensing stuff and Feld's doing it to keep his games or his names on the box, whatever. I don't care about all that. I just care the games are good. But I'm going to have to pick one just so I have something to put a link into the show notes. And I'm going to actually go with Vienna. No, it's not my favorite from the City collection so far, but Vienna, I think, is the best example of a remake like Eggman's talking about, where they took a classic game, La Isla, which I like to call Pokemon, Steffenfeld's version of Pokemon, which is this kind of kiddie game with like cute graphics and cards where you're trying to take pictures of unique creatures that don't exist in the real world. That's why I call it Pokemon. Totally made a new theme of spies in Vienna City and trading in tobacco and stuff to get pieces of evidence, and made it this more detailed set collection game with a new theme. But it still plays like a Isla. Like you get the basic feel of surrounding areas to collect resources and fighting for that control. But then Feld's like, okay, you know what? This was a neat core mechanic, and it had to do with like getting powers that get replaced on each turn and dealing with what you're held, and went, I'm going to make this a Feld game and make it like up there with, Marrakesh and Hamburg and the harder games, and put the advanced rules in, and they are fantastic. Like, it's no longer a kid's game. It's not even close. Now it's a Feld point salad with lots of ways to get points, where you have to worry about an economy and you have to pay for your workers and you can hire new workers, and there's all these combos. So I got to say, the Steffenfeld City collection in general, but I'm going to call out Vienna as the best example of a well-done reboot of a classic Feld game.
Yeah, I've yet to have one of those be a miss for me. So the City Collection is a perfect example. The one I was thinking of was Hamburg.
Yep.
So where they changed up, and I cannot remember what
Bruges.
game that Bruges. Thank you. Where they changed up the way you're drawing the cards so that you have a little more control in what colors that you're getting into your hands. It's not just a random draw pile. The tweaks that they made to that game, I enjoyed.
So I'm gonna switch up and I'm gonna go over to a new one because this one just came to me, and we were talking earlier about how sometimes you can throw in a bunch of extra bits here and there and it doesn't make a big difference, but sometimes you take all of it, you put it all together and you swirl it around in a big pot and you get something that's a big box that's not just a fancy new pieces and fancy things, but all the possible options that existed. And they did that with Castle Panic, the big box, second edition in this case, where they took all those bits and pieces that you could have picked up over the years and put it all together and gave you a rule book that told you how to put it together and how to use them together or how not to use them together in some cases. And that took Castle Panic, which the initial game, just Castle Panic itself, doesn't do anything at all for me, and turns it into a bunch of really good games with the right combinations available of those expansions. And they were all available in that one big box that made it a great game that was scalable to just about any group you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, no, you're bang on, because that took Castle Panic from a game I didn't care at all about to something that I wanted to play.
Though it did do the thing we were talking about earlier that I liked and it doesn't. They threw in a new expansion that no one had before to entice people who had everything already and collected all the promos from all the cons to give them something new. And I got to say that expansion is amazing. It's the quests and something, and I
Crowns and
Sean
Quests.
pulled this. What's it?
Crowns and Quests, which is a totally new way to play the game. It changes it to make it so that every time you play, it's a different adventure and it's not just kill all the monsters. Check out our review of the Castle Panic Big Box for more information. All right, you pretty much talked about all this earlier. Do you want to bring anything here, or should I just move on to the next one? Or we'll just go silent?
Sorry, I gestured at you. I assume you're looking at the screen.
I can't see you guys. I've told you many times.
I have nothing to say here. I said all this up top about what I think about Tokaido, which is interesting. Like, I like that these games are getting picked up and they're not, and that we're seeing reprints, right? Vassal's Law at work, yay. But is it a reboot?
So next one I have is Survive the Island. Again, we kind of mentioned this one earlier, but I want to call this out because it's an update and replacement for Survive Escape from Atlantis. And I want to call this out as a great modern example of a reboot that's taking like a classic game that's been around since the 80s that has had multiple revisions and additions put out over the years, each doing something different, still keeping it fresh. Now, the theme's identical, right? You've got the sinking island in the middle, and you're trying to get your meeples off the edge, and the meeples are worth different points, right? So it's still the same game, but they tweak the rules in a few ways. Now, I'm not going to get into the list. If you check out our review for that, because our review on the podcast, whatever episode, there'll be a link in the show notes. I actually detailed every single one of the changes. But what they did is they made the game quicker to teach. They made it actually easier to play by making some of the movements simpler. And they made the game faster because the simpler movement actually makes it easier to move to escape easier. This is all great things for a take that party game. Those are the kind of things you want. You want the game to be simpler, easier to teach, easier to pick up, and over a little quicker. And if you really have the time, you play 2 rounds. Now, an added bonus, they decided we'll throw in something totally new no one's seen before by throwing in kaiju. And they have their own new rules no one's seen. And I think that is amazing. I think it's a great example of keeping an older game fresh by just tweaking it that little bit, keep it interesting.
Yeah, the kaiju made it for me. Guys, how are we not talking about Endeavor Deep Sea? Like, it almost slipped out of my brain, and then at the last minute, I ran in here and added it to the show notes. I was like, oh, because Endeavor, good game, slightly problematic theming, and they're like, we're gonna do something new with it. And then, I mean, it is such a good game, and isn't it up for, or it won?
It won.
Yeah.
It won the Kenner Spiel des Jahres. Congratulations, Grand Gamers Guild and Burnt Island Games. and everyone else who worked on Endeavor Deep Sea. I think this is 100% deserved. It is one of the best games we played probably in the last 5 years. Like, it is just a fantastic game, the fantastic sense of exploration and accomplishment, and the fact you can play the entire game cooperatively or competitively, and it works just as well. 11 scenarios in the box. Like, and then that's without getting into the environmental impact of the game, with no plastic whatsoever in the game, but still providing you game trays. Like, it's a wonder. And yes, compared to the super colonial game where you could collect slaves but was pretty good, I gotta say it's a pretty good reboot.
Right? This is definitely a reboot. I think it fits the definition perfectly, and it's also a gem of a game.
Yep. So one that kept the theme a little closer to the original than Endeavor did is Viticulture, the Essential Edition. So this is another sort of version where you've gotten Viticulture, which is a great game sometimes, depending on how you play it, how you set it up, what you've got, what you don't have. And they've taken that and they said, look, here's the box. Here's the box you want. This is the game you want to play. And given it to you all in the third edition, which became the Viticulture Essential Edition.
Yeah, what they actually did there is they mashed up two games. They mashed up two boxes. There was Viticulture and there was Tuscany. And Tuscany was a bunch of optional modules for Viticulture. So what they did is the Essential Edition took the must-have expansions for Tuscany and put them in the core game box. And the one interesting thing about that, and here's where I still play my old edition, is they sent out a PDF that told you exactly how to create the Essential Edition with a copy of the original in Tuscany, which is what I did. I took my copy of Tuscany. I took my copy of Viticulture. I sorted all the cards. Actually, it was kind of a pain in the butt. Deanna and I did it one day together and sorted it all out and made Viticulture Essential Edition out of my copy of Viticulture and Tuscany. So I think that was an interesting one because it's different than the rest of these games, because it's really just taking what already existed and mixing it in a new way and then selling it as a new product, which is different than the Deluxe Big Box because they didn't just give you everything. They didn't include the Farmers of the Moor expansion. They didn't throw in the extra stuff. They just like picked apart pieces of the game and put out a essential version. And honestly, I think it's one of the best essential edition, because you keep hearing about these other essential editions that are just, big boxes or deluxe copies. I'm like, it really is essential. Like, here's all the stuff we put over Viticulture. This is the essential stuff. The rest you don't need.
So that made something pop into my head, and that's Vinhos, the deluxe edition, right? Yep. Viticulture, Vinhos, it's in my brain. But I haven't played the non-deluxe edition. I don't know if there are any changes in it. From what I remember, though, the fact that they did a redo of the board and the graphics and the Ian O'Toole art made the game just flow better and more playable. Yes. It just made more sense, right? So I'm like, something like that just redoing the board and changing up the icons and stuff can make the game better is, that's a reprint.
Yeah. And to be a little clear, I don't remember the original version, but Vinhos Deluxe actually completely changes a whole bunch of the rules, including the whole way the whole wine tasting works. And it's so different from the original. They actually included the rules to play the original game for people who prefer it. And I forget what they call it, but there's 2 rule books in that box. So you can play the new rebalanced version from Vital Lacerda, or you can play the original Vinhos edition using all the new components.
See, I didn't remember it. It had been a long time since we actually played it, but I remember being awestruck by the board.
It's like there's 2 different vintages is how it's sold, and there's 2 different books. Another example of that, actually, one of my biggest hidden gem games of all time is Egizia. And Stronghold Games put out a new printing of that, and I don't own this. I wish I did. Where they redid the rules and they tweaked it and fixed the gameplay, but then also included the other side of the board to play the original. And I think that's a great way for these games to get rebooted, especially when they do change a lot. So like when they do re-release the game, it'd be like, I put it this way, it'd be kind of cool if when Restoration redid Thunder Road, you could still play the original board game. They still included the original dice and the original boards, and you could still play that original game. All right, next one I have is similar to one Deanna mentioned earlier with Attica, is a game that needs a new update, another relaunch. Or maybe retheme it. Actually, honestly, I kind of don't want them to. I kind of want to stick with the do, but it happened because of licensing. So this is a game that lost the license twice and came out. So originally it was released as StarCraft, the board game from Fantasy Flight Games. The first game ever to use deck building, as far as people can tell, a fantastic representation of StarCraft, the video game, and one of, at the time, most asymmetrical games out there. Every faction played completely different. It did it long before Root, where everyone's trying to win different ways. But that went out of print because they lost the license, and they re-released it because at the time they had the Games Workshop license as Forbidden Stars. That is a 40K retheme. But again, they changed everything, right? It's no longer the ground. You don't have any races in Forbidden Stars that feel like Zerg. There's no, it's not quite as asymmetric while still being asymmetric. And I actually adore Forbidden Stars. I think it's a fantastic game. But now we need the new ones. So Fantasy Flight, Atomic Mass, whoever is taking care of that particular line of games, I would love. Corey Knizia, if you're still around, although I think you went indie, put it out in your own company. I would love a re-theme, re-update, redoing version of StarCraft, Forbidden Stars, whatever you want to call that engine. The stacked action token system or something.
So I figured we couldn't have this list without talking about Wingspan, which then led to Wormspan and now Finspan. But there's some significant rule changes. Well, I haven't played Finspan, but from Wingspan to Wormspan. So that's definitely not just a repaint. There was an interesting blog article that came out in the last couple weeks on the Stonemeyer blog with Jamie Stegmeyer talking about how people sometimes accuse them like it's a cash grab, and he's like, if it was a cash grab, I wouldn't have spent 5 years developing the rules and I would have just put some dragons on the cards, guys. So yeah.
The one thing I always wonder about those, like I've only played the two, and the one time we played Wingspan was digital. They don't seem that similar. Like you're building a tableau, but you do that in lots of games. Like, to me, they're just separate, independent games.
It's true. So there is the thing where they're trying to build off a successful brand, right? Yes. Wingspan got a lot of recognition. It's got name recognition. So let's keep going on that with what really is a standalone separate game that could have just been its own thing.
And another example of that would be our friends at Daily Magic Games with the Valeria games, right? Like every Valeria game is very different, but they all have Valeria on the cover.
Yeah, it's more like the universe of Valeria. Those are off each one of them is off doing their very own. Like you think of Thrones of Valeria, Trick Taker versus the Guilds of Valeria versus the original card game. Like, those are massively different games.
Yeah, that's true. Massively different, more so than Fin and
Worm.
So we're taking bets on what's next. What's going to be the next band? Someone said Butterfly Span, but I don't think so, with Elizabeth already doing Mariposas as a butterfly game. But maybe she will be interested in developing another one. I doubt it'll have a dropping meeples on the board aspect of it, though. That was a unique butterfly thing. All right.
Hold on. Mariposa, you drop your butterflies?
No. Endangered butterfly expansion.
He was thinking endangered.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. I thought you were implying that happened in Endanger and in Mariposa. And
no, just in Endangered.
Okay, thank you.
No, sorry if that confused people. Someone in the chat got to play with the dropping butterflies recently, so. So I do want to call it one. Sean's kind of already went this way, but I was going to do it ahead of time. I planned this. So before we go to the lobby, I did want to call out one that I think did it wrong. The one I'm going to call out is Hero Quest. Sean already said it. They basically photocopied the original rulebook, including typos and the fact that the line of sight diagram's wrong, which means they copied the American translation of the British rules instead of using the original rules to the game, and then totally ignored the fact that all of that was fixed in the 3 expansions that were released in North America, and the start of those expansions explained and had errata in them, and they just skipped all that. Like, they literally just directly copied the US version of the game. And all they did was give me new minis and new art for a game I loved. And I was just bummed. Like, I thought I was getting something more. Now, to be fair, we did the Kickstarter and I got tons of expansion content, and I got the whatever, Joe Magnanola's adventure and all the other stuff. But like, I wanted an update. I wanted a Restoration Games version of this. I wanted some kind of improvement on the original, or give me the big box. Give me all the original expansions with all the new rules. So there's rules for potions in the core game and stuff like that. I was so disappointed with that. And to be fair, we've only played it once because of that. because it wasn't what I thought I was getting. Like I wanted a better, improved, streamlined game. Give me a way to change it so the players don't just stand outside the doorway and line up and wait for the bad guys to go to them. Fix some of the issues with the game. The game's been out for so many years, and there's so many forums and fan creations and fan rules. I wanted so much more from Hero Quest.
We wanted the Restoration Games version, not the Hasbro version.
Exactly. I was so disappointed in this. As the person who shelled out the cash and bought you this as a gift, I was so psyched about this game, and I was so disappointed in it.
Yeah, like the new heroes are awesome. I do like the new minis. I miss the kind of the Games Workshop vibe the old one had. There's stuff I like, but just I thought I didn't want Restoration to like completely change it, so I didn't want just another dungeon crawler. Somehow it still had to feel like Hero Quest, but I didn't want what we got.
All right, so we've had a very busy chat going on here. This has been fantastic. So we're going right all the way back here. First off, Charlie Brown was asking, does the game have to have gone out of print first? No. We've got a lot of times it has. I think more often than not it will have, in order to be able to re-release it with a massive change and not get into any issues. But it doesn't have to. I mean, Castle Panic is a perfect sort of example of that.
Wormspan,
Yeah, Wormspan's in print. Wingspan's still out there.
Roger Dodger saying March of the Ants was redone. He can't wait to get it. And Shelley Brown saying, does anyone like the re-released Sentinels of the Multiverse? We have the whole first edition. Yes, a lot of people love the new version of Sentinels of the Multiverse.
So Sentinels of the Multiverse original, I did not like. Sentinels of the Multiverse Essential Edition, I fell in love with. Sentinels of Earth Prime, the Mutants and Masterminds version is even better. That's my opinion. I have not tried the definitive edition. Personally, I'm worried that a half-hour game is going to be too short for that. But that's supposedly the big thing. They streamlined it so much you can hammer through it. I'm not sure.
We've got Ryan mentioning Ad Astra becoming Artemis Odyssey, which we talked about.
That's cool. I missed that.
Wizwar, Consulting Detective, and Monopoly have all been upgraded with different versions.
Yep.
Ryan's saying Chaos in the Old World becoming Cthulhu Death May Die.
No, Chaos in the Old World is not Cthulhu Death May Die.
I have played both
Cthulhu
of those games.
Wars? I think it was re-released as Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Death May Die is a miniature heavy, we called it two-fisted pulp Cthulhu, because it was all about killing cultists and trying to defeat elder gods in maps. It was like a dungeon game. Whereas Chaos in the Old World was one of the biggest asymmetric games back when Fantasy Flight had their license. I adore that game. If it came back as anything, it's Cthulhu Wars. But I don't even think that's listed as a variant on Board Game Geek.
Charlie Brown's asking, did they make an update for Waterworks? I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of. I've got 2 copies of the game.
There was Building an Elder God.
Yes.
Which was a Call of Cthulhu version of Waterworks.
Oh. Okay.
Jamie Chambers is the designer. Look at me, pull that out of my head. I did not actually say the word and Sean didn't blip me. I cut it off. Yeah, Chaos in the Old World doesn't list anything as being re-implemented. That's a classic Eric Lang game. Which, man, Eric Lang, having sat down watching him game design, should do more Chaos games because they fit.
Fury of Dracula. There's one that keeps getting...
Yeah. They have changed it significantly too, from like tracking where you are on a map to using cards to. It's not a game that I'm all that familiar with. I have the original Games Workshop version that came with little metal miniatures. Played it maybe twice. I did not keep up with that, though. I know some local gamers that love it. Talisman would be another example, actually. Like from the 2nd edition to the newest 5th edition are very different games.
Ratus. Big box edition.
I remember that one being redone.
It's interesting. That's one of those weird ones and where the Board Game Geek can be strange sometimes, because Ratus Big Box is not listed as a re-implementation of Ratus.
Yeah, I'm actually not seeing any other versions of Ratus besides the original.
So is that just one Ratus Big Box is a separate entry that isn't linked to? It's weird.
Ratus, huh?
What else we got here? Ryan saying Star Wars Risk way out of print.
Is it again? It might be. This was not an episode where I went and double checked every game I mentioned.
Charlie Brown, I called this out earlier, talking about the Gloomhaven to Frosthaven upgrade rules. Hero Quest, big missed opportunity to create the modern experience for a new generation.
Heck
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
100%.
Like
I'd
said,
still
I
like to
got it
see
all.
someone take that on.
Yeah. Dragonfire upgrades, vastly improved, almost unplayable Crossfire.
Yeah, Crossfire was a Shadowrun based adventure card game, and they redid it as a fantasy version. And I'm kind of surprised it did so well as the fantasy version because it lost the Shadowrun license. What was it? Dagger? Sorry, I forget the full name.
Dragonfire upgrade?
Dragonfire, that's it. I'm trying to make a few notes as we go so I can throw some of these into our show notes.
Charlie Brown saying, from your review, it seems like Star Realms. Star Realms is just more stuff. There's not really a...
I don't know. Frontiers, when they put 4 players in the core box instead of it being a 2-player dueling game, and they added the cooperative rules.
The cooperative stuff. That counts.
With Frontiers.
Whereas and the Star Trek, as far as I understand, is just a direct re-theme.
Yeah, Star Trek is just
cooperative legacy game.
Yeah, it's just an art swap. Whereas that's the legacy version, which,
Roger saying Discworld was rethemed as Natty Narking.
Okay. That Discworld game, I remember people really hunting for it at one time.
Charlie Brown saying it was sad that the Pathfinder card game went from a good, solid adventure path, Rise of the Rune Lords, to poorer quality editions and eventually failing entirely.
I don't know. The new starter set I found way better than the original, but then it died. The new starter set came out. We reviewed it, and I thought it was way better than the original. They got rid of the whole format where you had to buy 4 different boxes to play through an adventure path and all that stuff. Instead, give you the full adventure path in one box. They did the base game and one adventure path, and then it died. I did enjoy it, but then we discovered Aventuria, and I don't miss it.
I see what Ryan's saying, though. Hero Realms off of Star Realms. Now that's definitely that's definitely a reboot, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Cult Cardboard is saying, just back for the first time ever, Nippon Zaibatsu, which is the re-implementation of Nippon.
Cool. It's a classic game that I know a bit. I think my dad had that one. I look it up for a quick second.
2015 was the original Nippon.
No, so that's not the one my dad had. It's a different Nippon. Oh, yeah, I remember that. That's not one. I didn't get that one. We got Zangwo and we got the other game that released around the same time and loved them.
And Zangwo is actually another one that we could have called out because it has been re-implemented into a whole new version that apparently improves it quite a bit.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good call. Actually, I'd love to try. I love Zangwo. I love the original, so.
What do we got here? Descent. Ryan prefers Descent first edition over second edition.
What about third and fourth or what? No, it's Legend of the Dark was the most recent.
Yeah.
I actually do. I don't know. That one's hard. So the original Descent was one of those like 3-hour dungeon crawl games, and it was super in depth, and it was kind of like sitting down to Twilight Imperium, and it was kind of fun. Whereas second edition made it like short hour, quick dungeon crawl. And I don't know what I prefer. Like it's a mood thing for me for those 2 versions of the game. Like and the app that they added to the second edition, and the fact they added the legendary version where you actually your hero was leveled up and you kept track and played a full campaign. I'm torn on that one. It depends what I feel like playing, which is why I've kept both.
Someone here is saying, as I jump back, Charlie Brown is saying, updated Trivial Pursuit. There's a billion Trivial Pursuits out there.
Honestly, I will call out someone we may or may not have an affiliate program with anymore because we can't figure it out. But Outsmarted is actually really well done. Yep. Though now it's pretty much switched to just being an app. The board's gone now, and you just each have your own app instead of, I don't know. They did weird things with the second edition, probably based on the feedback from the first edition. But like Trivial Pursuit, it uses an app, so the questions are always up to date. They localize to your country, and you can set your age so that like the kids playing get different questions than the adults. Is just kind of brilliant.
Yeah, they did it right.
While adding a time limit.
Ticket to Ride Anniversary Edition.
That's definitely a big, beautiful one, and it did the thing where it included an expansion. It included the 1910 set of cards, and then another set of full-size cards were included with it. So I do appreciate that, and I absolutely adore the trains. But the core game's identical, so it just includes one expansion and looks better. But
I'm thinking that's just shiny trains.
Well, it's the addition of the additional decks that are in there is actually really nice. It actually has the promo cards too that have been released so far. Were included in there, the little minor things, but kind of like to me, it's like Castle Panic Big Box, right? They included some of the. It's not like every Ticket to Ride. There's tons of expansions, but it did include ones that do improve the game.
Called Cardboard saying it seems the classics are getting the bling up. Agricola, Castles of Burgundy, Nippon is mentioned, Rumble Nation.
No, and it's good. Like there are a lot of games that came out like around the year 2000 that were fantastic, and that's kind of why the board game whole thing exploded here in North America, was just how good these games were.
Roger
that I think
Raw into that pile.
Yeah, Raw is a great example. 25th Century Games did a big update and are releasing the first expansion in years. Is coming out this year. We got to get an early look at it. Unfortunately, not compatible with my version of Raw, though, because you have to pull tiles from a bag, and the new tiles are larger than the originals.
But there's always new people coming into the hobby, so it's good to see this stuff continue to be put out.
Ryan mentions Struggle of Empires.
Is there a new version of that? That there is a group of my friends that adore Struggle, early Martin Wallace game. Is there a new version? I'm curious.
Re-implemented by Age of Reason, by Conquest of the Empire.
That's again around 2000, right? 2004 game.
Yeah.
Yeah, Martin Wallace. Yeah, I played this with Age of Reason, Conquest of the New World. Yeah, so it's been re-implemented a number of times. I couldn't talk about it because I've only played the original, going way back. So another, of course, example of a Martin Wallace game was the whole Kickstarter there for the new versions of Brass with the Iron Clays, where they took the grayest, most bland board game ever made that was actually fantastic and put out 2 new games based on it, one adding beer and new resources, completely updating the look, tweaking the rules so you can't basically bankrupt yourself. You can trade in 2 cards to be a wild card so you can always do an action. That is a fantastic example of an upgrade to or a reboot of a classic game. Brass turning into Lancashire and Birmingham, I think, is a fantastic example that I probably should have had on our list.
We have got John Brown saying we need to make reprintings of Valley of Kings, premium or not.
That's a good game. Did it come out again? That's an older one, isn't it? If I'm thinking of the right game. I can't spell, so when I try to look up this stuff quick. Yeah, that's what I thought it was. I have that one downstairs. The AEG Small Box Card Games. That was a solid game. Again, I don't think of it needing a reprint because I still have my copy.
There you go. Called Cardboard saying, give me a nice version of Torres. Pulling out those tower sections.
Torres did get
Knights.
reprinted at one point because I have the original with the plastic towers, and at some point it did come out as a new printing did come out, and I didn't like what they changed. I think they changed it to wooden. I need to see it. Yeah, see, that's not the one I have.
I think I remember having a discussion on that, and like wood should be better, but in this case it didn't.
I know I have the plastic one, but like the knights are just like wooden cones. They're so boring.
Similarly to the sort of brass topic, we've got someone here. Who is this? Roger Dodger brings up Imperial to Imperial 2030 with a new economic
that's what I'm
mechanism.
Curious about. Okay, so speaking of Torres, a new edition of Torres was released in 2023 that totally re-implements Torres. It's Torres Family. I have no idea if it's the same game, but it sure looks like it. Is it trying to show the 2 next to each other? I can't tell. I'm looking at the back of this box, and it looks like it has original Torres and the other, like another version here.
Interesting.
So yeah, look up Torres Family on Board Game Geek. I don't know how different it is. It's not rated very well, I will say. So I don't know. Torres Family features 2 ways to play. The first being the original 2000 Spiel des Jahres winner, but with simplified rules. And then there's a second new version, Impress the King Envoys.
If you've won the Spiel des Jahres, do you really want to simplify your rules?
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's a
2
questionable
versions,
choice.
sure, but leave the first one alone.
Yeah, they tweaked the original one. Odd.
Ryan points out, I'd like to see more games get the essential treatment over big box. I can't disagree there. Really can't disagree.
I would love to see like Essential Root at this point. Like I've never played Root, and I know there's a million expansions. Like, okay, I would no idea where to go. I have the base game downstairs, but if I wanted to go from there, like just let me buy a box that gives me the best of the best.
CO2 and CO2 Second Chance.
Ooh, that was a choice.
That was a choice.
That's a reboot. Let's take a really good economic Euro with an environmental theme and turn it into a political statement, and make it co-op. Sort of include the original rules, but not really, because we'll just make it so the world's going to end every time you play.
It's the most miserable board game I've ever played.
Yeah,
interestingly, Second Chance is rated better.
For Misery the game.
Well, you can basically play the original and Second Chance, and then you also have the highly punishing cooperative. I don't know. Some people like it. I think I sold my copy. I'm not positive. I enjoyed the original better.
We've got Dune. Dune is now Rex. But Dune is a lot of things. I mean, yeah, Dune is also new Dune with updated rules. Dune has become a lot of things. So that's definitely one in there.
I don't even know what's the closest to the original. I own the original, but I own it in French, and all the cards are in French, and I've never played it. Welcome to Canada, where you find thrift finds.
And then we've got Battlestar Galactica became Unfathomable, which was a horrible name for a game. Why did they
I
do
have
that?
no interest in Cthulhu, though. That was a disappointment to me. I have the original Battlestar, and I'm glad. I like the theme in Battlestar. Again, as long as no one starts role-playing the characters from the show. But yes, that's a good example.
Ryan mentioning Next Gen Hero Quest is Descent Journeys in the Dark. That's the real upgrade. Right.
All right.
Ryan wants a BattleTech Crossfire game.
I think that is a game.
And then we've got Chinatown was re-implemented as Waterfall Park, is what you were thinking of, Roger.
Huh.
Chinatown became Waterfall Park in 2023.
That's probably a better theme.
It is not rated as well. Chinatown is still rated better, despite the fact that it's a 26-year-old game.
Yeah, Chinatown was reprinted fairly recently. It did come back in print after many, many years of being out of print.
2019 was the most recent edition.
I said fairly recently, being 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Well, for a 30-year or 26-year-old game.
I do dig that game.
That's
like all the different versions of Acquire that have come up over the years. Right. There's even a totally new retheme of Acquire that was put out by, was it Renegade might have put it out? I think we're going to wrap it up there. That's not that I'm trying to shoot you down, chat room, but we've almost hit the hour mark.
We've gone
just
long
doing
with
the
this
ask.
one.
We have gone long on this ask.
There are so many games that fit this topic.
All right, well, there you have our thoughts on companies updating older games and re-releasing new versions, with some minor changes and others that are barely recognizable. Tell us about your favorite game updates on the Tabletop Bellhop Discord in a comment, or email mo@tabletopbellhop.com. Before you go, though, a reminder that we are currently in the search for a new sponsor.
Yeah, if you got a new game coming out, you want to get the word about, or something new hitting Game Found, or, an older game that's back in stock and available again. Or what about new stock for your Etsy store, or a brand new box insert you've got a new pattern for? Let us help get the word out about your thing. We're up for any type of collaboration, from a single episode to an extended sponsorship.
You can send an email to Deanna@tabletopbellhop.com for more info.
Welcome to the Bellhop's Tabletop, where we talk about the games we've played recently. Nothing for me.
Yeah, Sean's had other stuff going on, but hopefully we'll fix that in the next few weeks. We're hoping to get Sean sit down and play a bunch of games, so when we review them, Sean's not just playing moderator and leading the chat and telling you how to play.
There may be duct tape involved. Who knows?
So first up for us was our May Brews and Board Games event at the Walkerville Brewery. Started off very slow, like concerningly slow, possibly our worst event ever. I hope they'll have us back. But man, it filled in. Like, it just took a bit to get going. And once it did, it went great. What was unique about that, though, is it was still a slower night for us as hosts, because people were gravitating towards games they already knew how to play. and people were bringing their own games. Groups were showing up with stuff they planned to play on their own, which was awesome to see. Because I find as people get more familiar with the games, they start to develop favorites. And that's great because it means less work for us. They just come up and like, oh, you got this. The only problem with it, though, is we did have people disappointed. We didn't have certain games that we'd had previous weeks.
It was especially good, though, because we were one man down with Sean not being there. So having people be like, hey, I'm good. And even outside of that, I had a disproportionate amount of people that were like, the rules are in the box, right? No, I'm fine. They wanted to go and read it and figure it out themselves. So.
Yeah, that is something that I didn't realize, that board game cafes don't have game teachers, and that people who frequent board game cafes, that's what they expect, is to just take the game to a table and be left alone and figure it out on their own. And honestly, it's really nice to find players who are like that because, again, it makes it easier. So when there is a group that needs more coaching than others or wants to play a heavier game, so that's a good example is we end up teaching Earth, which is a heavier game with a longer teach. And I had the time to be able to teach them properly without having to get them pulled left and right.
Yeah, whereas I had a couple that grabbed Zensu and I offered to teach them that because I can teach it in my sleep. And there was a look of pure panic on the one person's face where they went, is the rules not in the box? And I went, no, you're good.
Now, as for stuff going on at that event, some of the games played. Touché, that's the classic 1977 game of Connect 4. With mystical, magical forces, proved to be very popular, which was interesting to see. Like, I think it was played all night. Riff Raff and Drop It continued to be extremely popular, which was weird because Riff Raff, previous events we set it up and we can't generally get people to play. And I don't know, I think people enjoying the game got other people to check it out.
No, Riff Raff killed me because someone wanted the table and I literally cleaned it up, and about 2 minutes later, and I'm not exaggerating, another group was like, where's that Riff Raff game? I want to play it. And I had to take it out and reset it up across the bar. And the timing, it was just the timing amused me.
UgTech was a complete failure. The only group that decided to try to play it decided it was far too embarrassing to play in public, which is something I never actually considered about that game, but I get it. The butterfly scenario in Endangered got played, which was cool to see. I was hoping they'd try one of the new ones when they did the expansion, because I kind of want to review that, and it would be nice to see someone's opinion on them. But the overall response I got from that table was the game was great. They didn't like the scenario. People did not like how the butterflies bounced and how random they were. They did end up winning, though, at the very end. Psychobabble was out all night. Catch the Moon was out all night. Other games I saw was Tiny Epic Galaxies. That's the first time I've ever seen that out at an event. Not my copy. Someone brought that out and they played it. Edo was extremely popular. You can hear my thoughts on Edo in our Atom coverage. Splendor Pit was played, which again, I love the bell. I made that group very happy because I gave them Alexander Peters to replace AP the Turtle to replace their bell, and that made the game better. Go Cuckoo was played, Sushi Dice, which is just a busy night.
Yeah, that Touché game, it is so vintage and neat looking and just kind of kitschy. And then there's the whole magnetic invisible force thing. So people would come over and be like, I got to look at this weird old looking game. And then they'd find out about the magnets flipping the pieces, and like everyone got sucked into trying it at least once. So that was neat seeing so many people checking that one out. I had bought a bunch of little blank notebooks. I picked up like a set of 60, and I slipped one into each game, and I wrote the name of the game in there. And I didn't have time to write in each one saying, write in me, tell me what you thought of the game. But I walked around and told people. I didn't know how it was going to go over. It's just an idea I had. I thought it'd be like box topping. If we had a little notebook in each game, you could write down that you played, who, if you liked it, you didn't like it, it sucked, who won, whatever, just, and the reaction I had to that. So that was really fun for me because I walked around, I told people, hey, I did a new thing. I put this book in the box, and across the board, everyone was like, oh, that's so cool. I want to do that. That's really neat. Right. I think next time I have to put pens out on the table to make it a little more accessible. I had a mug of pens back at the thing, but some people were like, oh, I was going to write in it, but I couldn't find a pen. And I'm like, giant mug of pens right next to the games, guys. But yeah. And what I haven't done is right after that, we were busy. So I have not gone back through to see what people wrote or if people wrote or how many people wrote. I know some folks did. and I was excited about it. I had actually forgotten about that, and Charlie Brown mentioned it in the chat room, which reminded me. So thank you, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, one of the ones that was interesting, there was a family there. The English wasn't their first language for everyone in the family, but it was a big group. I think it was 5-6 people, all from the same family. I think 4 generations at the same table, and it was their first time out. And right at the start of the night, they had grabbed Trash Talk, and I taught them how to play. They played that game all night. The dad in this family, everyone knew so well. They won. They did 10 cards their first time playing, their first time through. It was ridiculous. I've never seen anyone get 10 on Trash Talk. And then they switched to one of the other family members and couldn't get past round 1. So it was interesting to see like who was on the same page and who wasn't. And I kept saying, I'm like, how are you doing this? And I'm like, no, he's got a quirky sense of humor and we all know how he thinks. I'm like, so there, if you are a dad who likes to, tell dad jokes and crack jokes all the time and stuff, you probably have a hidden skill at playing Trash Talk.
Insider track for Trash Talk. Okay.
Personally, for playing, I did get a couple rounds of games in, not a lot of full games, but I did get to teach and play one of my all-time favorite games. Honestly, one of Sean and I's all-time favorite games. But wait, there's more from the Bamboozle Brothers. We adore this game. This is still, in my opinion, the best pitching game out there. Publishers, listen, I don't understand how this game's out of print. With some homebrew rules that I brought home from Adam, courtesy of Tim Riel from Codenames Live. So he's like, no, throw all these rules, do this, and this. And honestly, his hacks worked really well. If you want to hear my hacks, join the Discord and ask. They're an encouragement to join our Discord. If you want to know how to make But Wait, There's More better, head over there.
They're clever. You should do it. I snuck in a game of Zensu with my mom, and when I went to log it, I realized it was the first time I had played it this year, as much as I talked it up. So this is my first 2025 play of Zensu.
Yeah, I'm surprised you haven't played it. We packed it on our trip and didn't play it too, but we had other stuff to play. Up next, we went to a kind of special event on the show many times. We've mentioned how we like to go to breweries and play games, and we've talked many times about how much we love the Bandit Goose Brewing Company in Kingsville. Well, they recently were bought, sold. I don't know. It seems equitable or like friendly, but there's new owners. And they had their grand reopening on Saturday. And this, they have a new cook, they have a new head brewer. But a lot of the staff's the same. Like the people we know behind the bar, our bartenders we love, the hostess are all the same people. And I got to say one thing I will call out, that if you are a fan of Bandit Goose, it's just as good as before, if not cooler. They're doing some fantastic things, and the place is more packed than I've ever seen it. So congratulations to the people behind the new Bandit Goose Brewery. But there, we finally cracked open our copy of Floristry, which now I think is the easiest game in my collection I can teach. I could probably do it in like 30 seconds or less. Like, this is even easier than when I teach people point salad. You get a frame, you pull out 4 dominoes. The dominoes have 2 sides, like 2 things, and it's different colored flowers or the same colored flower. You do a Dutch auction using an app, which is where the price keeps dropping until someone hits ding. The winner of the auction gets to place 3 of the dominoes. The other player gets to place 1. Do this 10 times. And score points based on your largest group of every color. Then there's one little extra step where you subtract how much money you spent from your opponent. Whoever spent the least is going to get a bonus. Like, that's it. You now know how to play. This is from Tam, who we've mentioned on the show before, and David Gordon, and it's fantastic. It's just super simple, super elegant. Play multiple times in a row. Just, wow, this just works. Like, you just play it, and it's one of those games like, wow, that's it? And it works? Wow, that's good. Like, really good.
Yeah, this game is brilliant. And I had some concerns because real-time auction. And in fact, like the first time we played, you creamed me because real-time flipping auction. But I was able to adapt relatively quickly. Like, I figured it out. I wasn't watching the right part of the screen. If I was looking at the other part of the screen, waiting for the price to drop, which is why I was just a half second slower than you every single time. I'm like, once I realized the right spot to stare at, that made a real difference. And I did adapt my strategy to the fact that I know I have a slow trigger finger. So, but yeah, I really enjoyed this game. The pieces are nice. It's nice on a tactile level. It's quick. It's specifically made for 2 players. It is just good.
Yeah, I was hoping we get Sean out for breakfast yesterday or today, but we had too much going on in the morning with prom coming up and other things with our kids. Because I'm like, we can show you this in 15 minutes. We can play this on a coffee table. This is awesome. I'm sorry.
The question is, do I get to play or do you get to play?
And you can both play them. There you go. Game's nice and quick. Next up, game night at Brenda's. We broke out Genotype again. I wanted to review this one tonight, which we will. Stay tuned. But I wanted a refresher game just to make sure I remembered everything. This is just a really good order completion game that happens to be very educational and teaches you Mendelian genetics. Like, seriously, who knew a game about growing peas would be good?
And Eve really likes it, and I think she extra likes it because of the science theme. Because she doesn't always like strategy games. She's more of a party game person, but she loves science. So she's like, oh, the game about growing peas. I dig that one.
This was followed by a 4-player game of Reign of Dragoness from Grandpa Beck. This is our current go-to card game of choice. It's a ladder climbing game. Listen to the last episode to get a full description. Now, when we got our copy of the game from Grandpa Beck himself, he handed me a separate sheet. And this is a sheet of rules specifically for playing with 2 to 4 players. Now, if you picked up the game early and you don't have this, it's free on their website. There's a PDF, and it's a variant way to play with lesser player counts. Now, with this variant, in addition to every player getting their 13 cards that they have to try to avoid their hand with, you create 5 drafting piles, each with 3 cards in the center of the table. And when playing cards, you can include any number of cards from these piles as long as they match the pattern set, because this is a game where you follow the pattern. If someone played 3 3s, you have to play 3 5s, and you have to play 3 8s, and so on. So as long as you're matching the pattern set by the lead player, and you have to play at least 1 card from your hand, you can make sets using the face-up cards.
That sounds fascinating.
This leads to some really interesting play and a bigger decision space. But it also made card counting even harder than the original game, and I think that's a good thing. I think it made it more tactical and less strategic. This added a lot more of a puzzle feel to the game, because these new drafting piles gave you a lot to think about. And what would happen is it would come around to your turn, and you wouldn't have anything in your hand, and you'd be staring at the pile going, okay, is there any way I can make a run? Or is there any way I can, like, it was pretty simple if someone played a single card, but like, especially runs, like they're like, okay, if you're doing a run of 1, 2, and 3, okay, can I do a run out of what I have? Wait, I have a 7 and a 9. Is there an 8 out there? Okay, there's no 8. Okay, what do I have a 7? What if wait, there's a 6 and an 8. So if I use my 7 with that, okay. And there was a lot more thinking, and I thought it was really interesting. I think that was fine. Like, more AP wasn't a problem. I thought it was pretty good. I honestly think I like this better than when we played with 5 players, but I'm not sure. I need to try both modes more, but I got to say, as a 4-player game, this worked really well. And I can totally see it working with 3. It'll be interesting to try with 2. But there's still a ways to go with this one. Like, this is our second time ever sitting down to play the game. Yes, we played multiple rounds, so we have had quite a few plays in. But there's also advanced rules where you can do hordes of dragons and stuff, and I haven't even touched that stuff yet. Kind of like when we were reviewing Captain, My Captain. What's the pirate game? Skull King. There were all those like whales and stuff you could add at the end. We're taking this slow. We're gonna make sure we got the base game down before we touch any of those.
Like, when I played the base game, I thought, okay, that's a win. But this 4-player variant sounds fascinating. I wasn't in on it, and I need to try it, apparently.
Yeah, it's neat. Oh, and it's also the 2 to 4-player variant. So if we ever do sit down and try it 2-player, that will have that additional drafting.
We'll have to give that a shot.
Next up was our 20th anniversary trip. Didn't include as much gaming as I hoped. Like, I packed a bag full of games. But that's fine. It wasn't a bad thing. It just meant we spent more time exploring and walking around and checking out shorelines I'd never seen before, and checking out the food and drink of Southwest Ontario, and learning that the people on the west area on the edge of Lake Huron call it Ontario's West Coast, which just seems really weird because to me a coast is on an ocean. But I'm like, cool, that's kind of a neat game, a neat name. The Ontario's West Coast was part of what we explored. But if you're curious about the non-gaming parts of the trip, the best place right now is go to my Facebook, look for Mo Tuzano on Facebook, because that's where I shared all the pictures while we were out and about.
Like, as usual, Mo packed, I don't know, about 20 games to bring with us on this trip. That's pretty par for the course. my eyes still aren't up to playing a ton of stuff. So depending on the lighting in places, we sat down at one place and it had really bad orange lighting, and it stopped us from playing anything that evening. And there was a couple other places that were a little too dim. But
yeah, there was mix of too dim or just too busy. Like I didn't want to take up a table for an extended period of time. That happened quite often.
This was the least game playing we've ever done on any excursion, honestly.
So Cult Cardboard was asking about Reign of Dragoness with 6 more. Haven't had the chance to try it. We have 5 members in our family. So that tends to be the player count I can get at home. What we need to do is start bringing it out to the Walkerville Brewery and hopefully get a larger group of players. Or we get Sean over and we at least get it to 6. So as for games played on the trip, what was kind of neat was the 3 games we did play were completely new to us. So that was fun. We got to discover new games, learn new games. Number 1 was Lone Wolves. This is from Wonderful World Board Games, WWBG. This is a game we took home from Gamma Expo. 2-player only trick-taking game that's also an area majority tug-of-war style game. Like think Battle Line, the classic Nizia game, but with trick-taking. You got 5 suits of wolves and 5 different places to play them. Wolves are numbered 2 to 7, but they lap like a 2 beats a 7. The active player plays a wolf to an area. Then their opponent plays a wolf, which can be at the same area or another. You then figure out who won the trick following standard trick-taking rules. Like you have to follow suit, and if it's a higher number, you win. The loser's wolf is flipped to the lone wolf side. It is only worth 1 strength when you're doing the area control thing. But the winner gets to stay face up. So that if you played a 7 and it stays face up, it's worth 7 strength at that spot, which is pretty huge. But then there's a bonus for the loser. The lone wolf gets a scar token that they take from the area they played and can place it anywhere on the board. And I'm not going to get into all the types, but they do all kinds of things, like getting points based on what cards are there, regardless of if you win the area control or not, or giving you bonus to your strength so that you can win. So like one example is there's one where you get 2 points per lone wolf. So if you keep losing all the tricks at one spot, you may still be able to win it because you had that right scarred chip.
I think the bigger thing that changes it up more is those ones that can flip the scores on the areas.
Yes.
Like that to me was the biggest. The area control is very variable when you can flip it from a 12 to a 6, or I don't remember the exact numbers.
Yeah, so you keep playing tricks, right? Single-handed tricks, 13 cards. Resolve the tricks until you run out of hit cards. Each area can only hold 6 cards, which is an important rule. Don't forget it. When an area runs out of scar tokens, that color then becomes trump, and you put this little moon on it, and that also makes that area worth 5 more points for the area control. If a second area runs out of scar tokens, it gets a blood moon token, and then the trump switches to that color. And then once you played your tricks, you then figure out how it controls each area, and they get these point tokens. And as Deanna mentioned, the point tokens are randomized at the beginning, but can be flipped with some of the scars. You add up all your tokens, you add up the moon tokens you collected, then the value of any endgame scores. Player with most points wins. And that is a heck of a lot going on for a trick-taking game. Like this is a meaty, thinky, wow, there's a lot to keep track of trick-taking game. No perfect information because there are always, I think it's either 2 or 3, I can't remember exactly, cards that are not in every round. So you never know, like if you're going to play that 7, if you don't have the 2, if your opponent does. We played a few times on our trip, and I will admit the first game was rough. But once we got it down, it played really smoothly. Like our second and third games were super quick, like under 15 minutes. There's a lot going on, a lot to think about. And I don't know, like this is a significant step up from, say, both of the Fox and the Forest games, which are the other 2-player trick takers I know well.
Battle Line with Trick Taker pretty much covers it. But then you have those scar tokens, and that's where everything gets a little wild. I don't love the art. It's okay. It's not bad by any means, but I wanted something more distinct looking for each suit. I also kind of hate the font that they used. I didn't find the numbers super clear to read from across the table, but that is most likely a me problem. Like I could read fine on my own hand, but by the time it was across over there from Mo's, sometimes I was struggling with it.
And remind me in the after show to see if I can find a copy of this for Cult Cardboard. Again, we got ours direct from the publisher at Gamma Expo, so I don't know. And my
understanding is they are not currently shipping to North America due to current situations.
Correct. Yes. There are other games they have coming. They have delayed, including something we're supposed to be reviewing that we've been asked to hold off on because they are not currently shipping because of the tariff situation. I don't know if this game is included on that. So I gotta say I like it. The way we got our copy is I was talking to someone from WWBG about Sandbag, where Sandbag to me is one of the heaviest trick takers I've ever played, and I really like the decision space in Sandbag and the way you can fix your hand. Like you're sitting there and you're like, there's always something you can do if you can just figure out the right answer, and it feels like that. And I was talking about that, and like, well, if you think Sandbag's complicated, you got to play our game. Now, I got to say, I don't know, the two games are very different. I'm not sure I agree that this is heavier than Sandbag, but it definitely has that puzzy, thinky feel, and therefore I dig it a lot.
Yeah, I think Sandbag is by far the trickier of the two. But there is a lot going on here. Like, it's not evident at a quick glance, but there's a reason that this game is called Lone Wolves. The losing tricks and getting flipped to that Lone Wolf side and then gaining those star tokens is every bit as important as winning tricks, or probably even more so.
Yeah.
It's thinky. It has a lot of decision spaces. I liked it, but overall I didn't love it. I felt like I'd rather play Lost Cities or that area control card game from Inside Up that we tried at Adam that the name is blanking on me. Tug of War. There you go.
Yes. Yeah, this was actually quite similar to Tug of War with the tokens that you moved, because you had two sets of bidding, and the tokens you could win that would add 3 to your power is kind of like the scar tokens. Like, there's some overlap there.
Yeah.
Which I think is just parallel design happening there.
Yes.
All right, next. Another totally new to us game, so new that we picked it up while we were on vacation at a very cool game store called Future Pastimes in Sarnia. Check it out. And that is Azul Duel, which a lot of people are talking about. First thing I'm going to call out is when I shared pictures from Gamma Expo, I wasn't sure if it was a production copy or a prototype copy. I now know that was the production copy, and yes, the boards are that thin, because that is the one thing that has been called out the most on my Instagram sharing pictures from Gamma is what's up with those player boards. Yes, the original Azul has cardboard boards, nice thick cardboard. This has paper thin, well, not quite paper, but thick card thin playmats that don't necessarily lay flat.
I know you were knocking it for that, but I actually thought it was a really good quality, like linen finish cardstock. They were nicer than you would think for how thin they were. I didn't have a problem with it, but go on.
I don't know. It's just, I think it's because I'm comparing them to the original. Like, did they expect people to start doing plastic sheets to go over them right from the start? That's why they put out thin ones. I don't know. I was a little disappointed in that. The other thing I will call out is how mixed the reviews are, and I don't know quite where we're going to fall, but I will say I totally get it. Because it's Azul with a bunch more, and it may be too much. Basically, it's Azul. You have the basic familiar mechanics of drafting tiles from a set of warehouse tiles. You put these on the left side of your board in like the pyramid stack where there's 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 5. Once you're done drafting, if the markets are full, you then move over 1 to your scoring area. And then the scoring is the same Scrabble thing where you get 1 point for the one placed, and then points for adjacent ones going up and points for adjacent ones going across. You get bonus points for completed rows and columns. Like all the basics are there. It's still Azul, which is better than I thought, because looking at it looks very different. That's still all there. So you have all the Azul basics, but then there's more, and there's just lots more. One thing, everything's bigger. Instead of stopping at 5 tile spaces, and it's now 6. It's a 6x6 grid, and you collect 6 of a tile to fill the bottom row. But the big thing is, and to me, this is the biggest standout of this as being completely different, is you're building the right side of the board. You're playing the color pattern you're trying to fill as you're playing. And for anyone who's played Azul on the blank side will kind of get how difficult this can be. You are literally drafting what they call ceiling plates, and the plates show what 3 colors must go where. And then there's a special spot where you can either place anything or get some bonus tiles. So you are building your own unique Azul board while you're drafting the tiles, which is just weird and funky. Drafting itself is quite different because the markets now have 2 halves. There's like a sun half and a moon half. And when you draft off a market, instead of all the tiles going in the middle, they instead go onto the moon, and then you stack them in the order you want, which adds a ton more player interaction than the original Azul. Like, yes, there's hate draft in the original Azul. Well, now you can like set up the market in hate ways, which is very different. And then later when you're drafting, you can choose to take from a sun half, or you can just take from all the moons. But again, you always have to take the same color. And then there's a bigger market with a big moon. And if you take the tiles off that, you get the first player marker, which is -2 points. All that stuff's also there. Then another new thing is there's bonus tokens. And those go on the moon halves. And once all the tiles are drafted off a market, you can then spend an action to take these bonus token. Every round, you're going to get 2 of these. And what you do with them is you can trade in 2 tokens with the matching color to count as a tile when moving stuff over. Or you can trade in 3 that don't match to move something over. So there's another thing to worry about while you're doing it. And then there's a thing where there's the special tiles you collect that when you put in 3 of a type, you then get a bonus tile that scores for how deep it is, how closer to the bottom you go. And then you notice when you're playing that there's only 5 flipping rounds and you need 6 to make a row, which means you have to put one of those bonus tiles. Like, there's just so much depth to this game. And like, I don't know, without, this isn't even getting too detailed. This is just like giving you an overview of all this stuff. And I'm kind of sounding panicked here because that's kind of how it makes you feel. Did I miss anything there?
No, I mean, you got it. Basically, it's Azul where you're drafting your own board. That's what I would distill it down to. I think the biggest change for me here is, like you said, that it's 6 across and you get 5 turns. It's not like Azul where you stop when someone fills in a row. It's a set turn limit. And I like that there is a set turn limit and that you're going to have exactly 5 turns and it's not a variable turn limit that triggers when someone triggers end.
Mm-hmm. I do like that.
So it's interesting. I was just going through the comments and reviews on Board Game Geek. And again, a lot of people are really calling out the quality of the product. And that's a whole other issue. But realistically, looking at the weight, comparing it with Azul, looking at the comments, a lot of people are saying they have taken Azul, which plays fantastic at 2 and is a tight, simple game, and added a whole bunch of complexity just to play it with 2 players. And take it for what you were. If you want a more complex Azul, this could be the game for you. Although a lot of people are saying that they still prefer Queen's Garden as the complex Azul variant. So again, I haven't tried this one yet. It'll be interesting to see. Right now, original Azul comes in at 1.77 weight, with Azul Duel coming in at 2.39. So it's a significant jump in weight.
So
that's it.
Mo and I were debating this in person. Like, Azul on its own is a great 2-player game. And it's also a slightly smaller footprint, which makes it better sometimes for playing in a coffee shop or a bar, right? So does this game even need to exist? Like, what's wrong with just playing Azul? Oh, hey, we should have talked about this earlier in our Reboot episode. Even given all that, I dig it. I am not sorry that we picked this up. So,
See, I'm on the other end.
Like Taxes, the board game. So,
yes. Yeah, and honestly, I'm on the other end right now. Like, it's much heavier, more decision points, more strategy required, more tactics, super tight with only 5 rounds. It ends before I want it to. My board's barely full. Like, you basically have to decide, am I going for a row or a column? Because you're only going to get maybe 2. There's these endgame scoring tiles where you figure you're going to score all 3 possibly. It sure doesn't seem like it. I don't know. I like the new stuff. I like the weight, but it's not what I want from a 2-player Azul experience. Like, this is no longer the game I want to bring out to Bandit Goose Brewery we were talking about earlier and sit with Deanna and have some pints. That doesn't work with this game. And if it does, I'm just going to get destroyed because it
works for me.
It's much heavier.
It works for me. Everything you hate about it is what I loved about it. I wish it took up a little less table space, but otherwise I love this game. Like, I can't wait to play it again. I know you thought it was longer and chunkier than you wanted, but the complexity just felt right for me for a relaxing evening with pints. Like, this is about where I want to clock in while having some drinks. And it's like, once you have everything down, like, we did the thing where we didn't play a full game. We played like 3-4 rounds and then we had to go. So we packed it in. And that first game, I was like, maybe that game I didn't want to be having pints. But when we picked it out the second time, I was like, yeah, okay, now I get this. Everything's, I felt like you could pick it up relatively quickly if you've played Azul before. You're only adding in some additional rules. Like if you know Azul, you're adding in a couple other steps. It's not vastly different. I dug
I don't
it.
know. Like I said, I'm on the other end. I enjoy it. I think it's neat, but like maybe if I sit down with an espresso to play it, or I'm at a coffee shop, or to me, this is not a casual hang out and play games kind of game. Like kind of like Queen's Garden. I really like Queen's Garden. That's to me the heaviest of the multiplayer Azuls, but it had to be in the right mood. I don't bring King's Garden to our Brews and Board Games event because it's not quick to teach, quick to play, and simple to pick up, right? I bring Azul, and this is the same thing. I'm like, I want to bring it out to the event just to see if people try it and hear their thoughts. But I like the accessibility of the original.
I felt like this was simpler than Queen's Garden. I don't know. I think I'd rather play this than Queen's Garden, but Queen's Garden clocks in at higher player counts. So,
yeah. Anyway, it's been what we played 1.5 times. So
yeah,
maybe
my 1.75 review is
Queen's Garden comes in at a 2.92, just under a 3 weight. So Board Game Geek at least thinks it's a good chunk heavier than Azul Duel.
Queen's Garden's good though. It's heavy. We're talking about heavy to light games, and we're going to talk about something we almost never talk about on this game, and that is going to be a historical war game. Yes, we do play those. Yes, we actually enjoy quite a few of them, just not the stuff that usually hits the table for us. Well, what I finally got to do is one of the games that has been on our pile of shame for the longest, not being some game I had as a kid that just happened to still be around and I never played, or something I got in an auction, but something I actually sought out and purchased over 10 years ago. And that is the Columbia block war game, Julius Caesar, Pompey, and the Roman Civil War. Now, we have raved about another Columbia block game quite a bit on the podcast. And whenever we talk about Warros, and we talked about Fog of War, this came up, we talked about unique mechanics, and that is Hammer of the Scots. That is a fantastic gateway war game with some Euro elements or Warro, whatever you want to call it. Well, now I'm going to have to start adding Julius Caesar to pretty much those same lists that we put Hammers of the Scots on. This is an even simpler game, in my opinion, though I think the strategy of the game is strategy level or tactics required is much higher. The mechanics in Hammer of the Scots, there was lots of little fiddly rules about certain people and William Wallace and what happened in respawning in that. This is much more straightforward, but I think it's also much more difficult to play well from what I've seen so far. Now, Columbia block system is a fantastic series of war games where instead of having face down chits, you have blocks with stickers on them. Stickers are only on one side, so you get a fog of war. You can't see what your opponent is moving or doing. You just know there's a unit there. It could be an auxiliary or it could be Pompey himself. You don't know. The other thing they do is that these have numbers on the sides, and it represents the strength of the unit, and you turn it when it gets damaged. So you might be on a 3 block at the start of the game, but if it gets damaged, you turn it to a 2, you turn it to a 1. If it takes another hit, it's eliminated. Similarly, when you recruit, you can bolster the units and turn them the other way. Those are the main mechanics in Columbia war games. Combat is super simple. The strength of the unit, that 1, 2, 3, 4 is how many dice you roll. Really simple. And then there's a little symbol, a letter and a number on every block that'll say like A3 or B2 or C1. Well, the number of dice is the number, like on the turn. A is who attacks first, then B's, then C's, defender going first. And then the number is what you need to roll on a D6 or that number or lower. So like a B2 would attack before a C3. The B2 would need 2s or less to hit. The C3, if they survive, would need 3 or less. Like I just taught you the whole Columbia block system in a pretty short time. So for gateway Euros, it doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, it has been a very long time since I'd played any of the Columbia block games. I would hazard to say 10.5 years ago, we played Hammer of the Scots, thought it was cool and picked this up. Yeah. So I really needed the rules refresher, but honestly, it is so simple. Like the battle system is so easy to pick up, and the basics of battle and movement and all of that is easy. The strategy is another question entirely.
Yeah. So this particular game recreates the Roman Civil War, super asymmetric, like ridiculously asymmetric, which is something we usually talk about with power abilities. But Pompey controls most of the Mediterranean, most of the key cities in the game. This gives Caesar the burden of attack. The game is only played to 10 victory points, When the game starts, Pompey has 7, Caesar has 1. Now, gameplay is card driven. Each card you play denotes how many units you can move. Not even units, how many like blocks of troops, like multiple blocks, how many armies you can move, I think is probably a better way to do it. And then how many levies you get. So you're playing cards that tell you how many groups of units you can move. And then it tells you your levies. Your levies are used to recruit new troops or bolster one. There are also 7 special cards representing the Roman gods. They do neat, powerful things. But there's a neat rule where if both of you play a god, they cancel each other out, which I think is an amusingly thematic thing for Roman gods. Then there's a cool part about when you're recruiting new legions, they only can be recruited in certain cities, and the legions say which cities are on them. So there's like this whole drive to conquer cities that give you powerful legions. Cleopatra exists and switches sides a lot during the game, which I think is appropriate. If you defeat her in battle, she just joins your side. And then like every 5 turns is the end of a year, and you have to winter, basically. Like you have to each city can only hold so many troops, and your navies have to move into port or they get lost. Cleopatra returns to Alexandria, and whoever owns Alexandria at the time gets Cleopatra for the next round. Just a lot of neat stuff going on. Now, all of that sounds like a lot, but like Deanna said earlier, this is actually a very easy to learn war game. Great for people curious about war games and getting into war games. There's no math really needed, like at all. You're rolling dice and looking for numbers less than. There's no combat result tables or any of those funky things. There's simple stats on blocks instead of chits. There's no stealth. There are some like little niggling rules like reinforcements, where if you're attacking from 2 different directions, you have to choose who's the main force, who's the reinforcements, and they don't show up till turn 2. But that's about as complicated as the game gets, what I just described there.
So here's the one part you may get hung up on. Do you know your ancient cities? Because good luck finding them on the map. The text is smaller and larger depending on how big the cities are. And some of this, again, is my vision. But even Mo was struggling to find the places on the map. Now, the next problem is the map is it's a fairly good size fold-out map. But we got really big, chunky blocks sitting on the map, blocking your vision of many things on the map. So, sure, you might know where Syracuse is, but can you find Nabia? I'm like,
no, seriously, like I felt we both needed a cheat sheet that showed.
I have a
the map of the
classics degree.
Mediterranean.
This made me feel like I needed to go hand it in because I was like, oh no, where? Okay, well, it's over towards that side. I know it's got to be down there towards Alexandria, but God only knows.
Yeah, the board is actually 17 by 33 inches.
I want the upscaled rollout map edition, like a vinyl play
map version. I like. We've only played once, and I'm tempted because I actually really love these style of games. Now we keep talking about how easy the game is. Now the problem with the game is the strategy. So the first game didn't go so well for Deanna. She played Caesar. I actually won the game at the end of the first round of a potential 5. She made some early mistakes, mainly due to inexperience and unfamiliarity with the system, that basically let me hold everything I started with as Pompey. The only thing I actually lost was Rome, but before I lost it, I was able to take 2 other cities. Thanks to the God of Death, actually saved my butt on the last round and managed to let me sneak it out. But to be fair, she did take out Pompey, which was my most powerful troop. But that's just the learning curve, right? Like as I said, Caesar starts behind, behind the fence in a bad position. Yeah. And the biggest problem was a misunderstanding with the initiative system.
I had a simple rules error where I thought a 3 was going to be the fastest and not a 1. Or is it converted?
You got it the other way around.
I got it the other way around. Yeah. So I played it the wrong way, thinking, well, I'm going to rush in and take Rome on my first turn, and I'm going to get there before Mo. And because I'm going to get there before Mo, I'll be able to recruit someone in Rome because Caesar has a tile to recruit a relatively powerful troop in Rome. And that did not happen because I did not have the initiative. So that messed up my first turn. But I also made some, I tried to make some bold moves and they didn't pay out. Like dice are a factor after all. It's, like you play the odds, but sometimes the dice just don't like you. I super enjoyed playing it and I can't wait for it to hit the table again. I don't know, because it's not obligation. I don't know when we'll play it again, but I loved it.
Yeah, no, it was good. Columbia block games are just good. It's one of them. Like, man, now we need to bring out War of 1812 again, or not 18? Yeah, the invasion of Canada. I like the
Rome theming better.
Well, yeah, obviously. Man and color ancients.
And just a reference, Hammer of the Scots is 62nd in the list of war games, where Julius Caesar is actually at 45.
Yeah, it's ranked higher. It is ranked higher. So yeah, class had like one of the oldest games on our pile of shame finally knocked off. I admit it felt good going to my Excel file and deleting that one because it's been. And know what's funny is I have packed this for so many vacations and trips, and I'm always like we'll bring it with us when we're staying at Jack's. And we're like, we're going to play it.
I'm not learning that while I'm
drunk.
I am not learning that while I'm drunk. Don't pull that out. What are you doing? Put it back in the box.
See, that's how I feel about Azul Duel. Like, we ended up sitting down at a really nice coffee shop in Port Stanley that had nice big tables and light, and went, you know what? We're in no hurry today. If this takes 3 hours, it takes 3 hours. Oh, that's it. That's all we played. Hopefully we'll get Sean over while he's got some free time in the next couple of weeks and let him talk during the segment in the next week, the next time we can.
Well, what about you guys? What has hit your table recently? We'd love to hear all about it on the Tabletop Bellhop Discord at discord.tabletopbellhop.com. You get to plant and grow flora and attract fauna in your own private ecosystem in the big deck tableau builder, Earth.
Earth comes from Canadian publisher Inside Up Games and has been a hit since it released in 2023. Now, we're a bit late to the party, but I'm glad we finally arrived, as this is just a great game. It was designed by Maxime Tardif and features artwork from M81 Studio, Connor McGooey, who is the owner of Inside Up Games, Yulia Sazonic, and Kenneth Spond. Now, I do have to thank Brandon from Inside Up Games for hooking us up with a review copy of this clever engine builder.
Component-wise, Earth really isn't all that special, except for the awesome artwork on the cards. You get cards. A ton of cards. So many cards.
Yes.
And card playmats for each player to hold resources and cards, and a central mat to hold other cards. There are some nice wooden cubes, some cardboard tokens as well. The most striking components are the growth tokens, which consist of wooden discs and tree-shaped canopies. It's all very functional.
But relatively great looking, too. In Earth, each player is trying to build their own thriving biome. This starts off by choosing a starting island, a climate, and an ecosystem, and each of those is represented by double-sided cards, and you get to choose which side to lay down. The island determines your starting resources in the form of cards, compost, which are discarded cards, and dirt. Dirt is the main currency in Earth. Your island is also going to give you a unique special ability, and so does your chosen climate. And your ecosystem is going to provide an endgame scoring opportunity.
Now, in addition to every player having their own set of 3 in their own board, there's a central board that is going to have 4 random fauna cards or animal cards placed on it. These provide in-game goals for points. When playing on the basic rules, it's it's just 10 points for whoever accomplishes them. While we're playing the advanced rules, it's kind of a race. So the first person gets more points than the second. And also, if you're playing with the advanced rules, you use the second side of the board, which has you place out 2 more of those ecosystem cards. That gives an endgame scoring opportunity that is available for every player, not player specific.
Gameplay involves the active player taking one of 4 actions and the other players following along to take a lesser version of these actions. In addition, anytime any player takes any action, every player gets to look through all of the cards in their tableau and activate every card ability that matches their color of that action.
Play continues until one player has filled in their entire tableau, and that's going to be a full grid of 16 cards in a 4x4 grid. You finish that round and then add up your points. Players get points for each card played, for the number of sprouts they've grown, how many growth rings they have, their completed canopies, every card that they've composted, plus any endgame scoring cards that they have included in their ecosystem, and anything that they score for the public ecosystems.
So the cards players are going to play into their tableau consist of flora cards, which come in 4 types: mushrooms, herbs, bushes, and trees, and landscape cards. Each card's worth some amount of victory points just for putting it into play. Most Flora cards can also hold a set number of growth rings that stack and are topped by a canopy when completed when you hit the max height. Completed stacks are worth more than unfinished ones. Flora cards can and usually do also have a spot to hold sprout cubes. Now, these are also worth points, but more often you're going to spend them as resources due to the various abilities in the game.
Along with this, every single card in the game has a color-coded special ability. Some of these, black ones, happen immediately and then have no future effect. Brown abilities feature new endgame scoring opportunities. The last 4 colors match the colors of the basic actions in the games, and these abilities will go off when any player takes the associated action. Some cards also feature rainbow abilities that go off on any action other than than plant.
Now, all of these abilities go off in a very strict order, and this is the one part of the game that might trip you up. You have to pay attention. You can either choose to activate the powers on your player board from your starting card or the cards in your tableau first. And then once you're going to activate the cards in your tableau, you have to go left to right, top to bottom. And figuring out what you want to place left to right, top to bottom is a big part of playing Earth well.
So getting into those actions you take, the green action is planting. That's how you play cards from your hand. It lets you plant new cards. Active player gets to plant 2, then they draw 4 cards and keep 1. Everyone else only gets to plant 1 card but draws 1 card. But then everyone activates all of their powers, their cards in their tableaus that have green powers. Now, every card you plant does cost dirt. Dirt's the main money here.
Next is the orangey red action, composting. This gives the active player 5 dirt and lets them compost 2 cards from the supply. The other players get either 2 dirt or compost 2 cards from the deck. Then every player activates all of the orange, red, and rainbow actions on all of their cards. Composted cards are worth points at the end of the game. In addition, a number of cards let you spend composted cards for effects.
The teal or sort of light blue action is watering. This gives the active player 6 sprouts and 2 dirt, and everyone else gets either 2 sprouts or 2 dirt. Then everyone activates their teal and rainbow actions on all of their cards.
Now, the final action is kind of like a yellow-green, and that's growing. This lets the active player draw 4 cards. Note there's no hand limit in this game, and add 2 growth rings to their cards if they can fit. Everyone else draws 2 cards or gets 2 growth rings, and then the same thing we repeated multiple times. Everyone activates their yellow-green abilities and all their rainbow abilities.
There is one final type of card and action in Earth, and those are event cards. These can be played at any time on any player's turn. They have an instant effect and then go into a stack on your player board. This is because each of them is worth points in addition to their effect, with many of those points being negative.
And while doing all of this, players must also be watching that main board to try to claim points for attracting fauna. In the base game, anyone who hits the requirements gets 10 points. But in the advanced game, as Mo explained earlier, it's sort of a race to try and claim them before the other players, with the first person to claim scoring more points, and then the second gets a little bit less, and the next one down gets a little bit less, etc.
Yep. So the thing I don't think is really evident from that overview is just how diverse and varied the cards and actions, or whatever you want to call the bonuses, the things at the bottom of the cards are, and how the entire game is really about finding synergies and combos between the cards. Like there's abilities that let you draw more cards. And then there's another ability that might let you compost cards from your hand. So you're going to want to try to set those up so you get to draw before you have to compost. And then there's other ones that are going to let you spend compost for soil or sprouts. And then now that you have the soil, you can spend the soil to do something else. And then there's lots of cards that generate sprouts, and even more that let you spend the ones you have. And there's even the ability to trade in sprouts for dirt that everyone can do at any time. And the same things with growth rings, right? You're going to grow them, you're going to spend them, you're going to do all kinds of things with them. Dirt in this game is hard to come by. This is a tight economic game, and you can trade sprouts for dirts. And there's other ways to set up your cards to make these big combos, and you're trying to make an engine out of all of this. And while you're doing that, you got to watch for all the scoring cards, right? So you've got your own personal card where you're trying to score it at the end of the game. If you're playing the advanced rules, there's 2 public cards you're trying to score. Everyone's trying to get the animals and attract them. And then there's all the different card abilities and ability colors. and there's climate symbols that come into play. And a lot of the information on the cards honestly means nothing until it matters. Kind of like other big deck games like Terraforming Mars. There's no reason to say play a mushroom over a bush until you have a landscape card that gives you a bonus for every mushroom planted in the same row. So it's very interesting that way.
Yeah, I think your first play on this game, you're really going to sort of want to play and accept the fact that you're probably going to make a couple of mistakes. You're going to forget something. You're going to overlook something. You're going to miss the importance of this or that. And then just sort of absorb it all and take another run at it. Even if you don't finish the first game, if you realize you've made some huge mistakes, like, accidentally not activating all of your cards every time someone plays. My big mistake in this game, and I think Mo had me say certain things during my text for a reason. I was thinking of it more like Race for the Galaxy, where when someone else plays a green card, for instance, you do the minor green thing, and I didn't activate all of my green cards. I just did the one minor thing. And you need to not think of it that way. You really are doing all the things. You just get the minor bonus from playing that card.
Yeah, and then once you did that, we knew to keep an eye out for that while we're teaching it to other people. And I've loved teaching this game and seeing people play it at public play events, because you go away, you teach the game, you come back, once or a couple rounds in, and the light bulb has gone off and they've started to get it, and you see these cool combos that people are making, and I love that moment.
Yeah, it's actually gone over surprisingly well at our public play events so far, as a heavier game. But again, it's one of those games where you show it to people and they just look like deer in the headlights and they're overwhelmed. But then once you start playing, you realize just how succinct it is and actually how quick it flows. And yes, stress to everyone the first time you're teaching the game that you get to activate all of your cards when anyone takes those actions. That is an important distinction. What I like about the game is that combo building, right? Like it probably noticed, if you're a fan of the show, and this comes up a lot, and I think Deanna feels the same, that we all like puzzly games where there's a puzzle to be solved. And that's what Earth presents to me almost with every hand. In addition, the game's super asymmetric due to the way you pick those starting 3 cards, right? Your island, your climate, your ecosystem are going to send you wildly different directions. Like the basic game has every player just get one of each, and that's how we played it most of the time. But like once you know the game, you get 2 choices per card. So you already get 2 choices per card. But the advanced rules, you get 2 cards. So then you got like 4 options, like 4 island options and 4 ecosystem options, 4 climate options. And that's like a silly number of combinations just for one set of starting cards. And then you throw in stuff like the random fauna and the public ecosystem cards, and you're never going to play the same game of Earth ever, which is usually an advantage of big deck games. But like this seems even more so than other ones I played. You're not going to see the same combos come up again and again.
And I said it earlier, and Mo just said it again. This is a big deck game. And I don't think people necessarily always realize what that means. This is a huge deck of cards. You will play this game many times and may never see cards coming up again. Shuffling this is an exercise in logistics, trying to figure out how to manage it.
You have to have them in multiple piles. You cannot put all the cards in one tower. They're going over. It is a ridiculous amount of cards. The game scales really well. It plays just as well at 2 as it does at higher player counts. And because you're invested every turn, you're doing something every turn, it doesn't bog down at higher player counts where you're waiting for it to come back around to you while you're sitting there. You're just involved at all times, and it really flows.
Yeah, my first learning game was with 5 players, and I played it with 3, and I swear the time was very similar for overall play time. Now, another thing I like about just that startup, right? The picking your starting things, which again, I'm going to tie it to another big deck game, is kind of like having the prelude for Terraforming Mars is kind of built into this game. Is you start with a bit of an engine. Like you should be able to figure out a combo with your starting cards to kind of give you direction. And I love that, because so many of these big deck games, when you start off, you're just like, I don't know, it's a bunch of cards. What do I do with them? I got to figure out a combo out of this, where right from the start, before you've drawn your first hand of cards, you should have some idea, right? Like maybe you're going to specialize in orange abilities and try to take the orange action a lot, or you're going to find a way to like get discounts on your card so you know you're not going to need to take the dirt action as often. Or you're going to look at the animals up and be like, okay, I need to collect, say, mushrooms and only mushrooms as much as possible. Or I remember once Deanna had a card where she could make a diagonal set of things and she figured out the maximum amount of points she could get for it and then built her whole tableau around that. And I love that just by picking your initial 3 cards, you can start to form a strategy.
Yeah, one of the things I find is, and a lot of people who've listened to the show can probably figure this out, I tend not to overthink. I'm a quick player. I don't suffer much from AP because it doesn't really matter that much to me. I like to, well, what's an idea? Okay, let's go with this. And this gave me that push start to really easily be able to do that. I had an idea right away as soon as I got my cards. Oh, I'm going to try this. And it was enough to work. Whereas even though I had made a massive mistake and for like 5 turns not scored half the points I should have been scoring, I still managed to almost win because I managed to get the right cards for the engine I had started on from turn 1 and had this huge engine happening where I was using sprouts to do all sorts of things. And then by the end of the turn had all the sprouts back again. And so it's really there's that possibility there. Even if you don't want to have to really think about it, it gives you something to start and just run with.
And I love that is built in and not an expansion.
Yes. Yeah, agreed. Next thing I like about this game, and honestly a big reason why it works, is the clarity of the card design and iconography. Yes, there is a learning curve. Your first game, you will be overwhelmed. But it's not Race for the Galaxy level. Like, you will quickly pick up what the icons mean. Thankfully, they put it right on the bottom of every single player board. The only one people I find have trouble with is the compost from hand versus the deck. But I can clearly explain that when I'm teaching the game. Most are large and clear enough to see across the table. So you have that thing I like where I don't have to ask you how many snowy climates do you have. I can just look over and see the symbol from across the table. So I don't have to telegraph my strategy by having to ask you questions.
And they did some really clever things with the cards. Like, say, there's a card that scores for all the animal flora. So any flora that has an animal name in the title. And then some that will be italicized, say, and then all the cities will be in bold, and then something else was, like they did all that so that it's just dead simple to look at very quickly, even from across the table. Even if I can't read what the name of the mushroom is that you have, I can tell it's italicized, and I know it's that type of creature or town. I can't remember which one's for which, but it was very clever. I was really impressed with it.
Yeah, I have to say, when you guys put me down for this, there are a couple of gotchas, absolutely. Like making sure you play every turn every time. And where you compost from. Those are the 2 big gotchas. But aside from that, it's really easy to pick up. Like the basics of the game are just, okay. Oh, this makes perfect sense. Let's play. You just have to make sure you don't jump in too fast and forget a couple of major details.
Yeah. Now, the other thing I have seen people struggle with too, though, is keeping your eye on the prize. People get distracted by just planting things and filling out their tableau, or get distracted by like 1 point card in their hand. So they're like, I got to plant all the mushrooms. I've noticed it particularly bad on first play, sometimes second play, because there are a lot of cards and a lot to learn. And I find people lose track of the end game scoring cards, and even more so the animals. People will completely forget to build towards the animals. And I've now learned when I'm teaching the game to strangers that, like Deanna said, we set the people up and we wander away and we come back. When we come back, go through all the animals where everyone is. Like, I'll literally stop the game and say, hey, has anyone scored any animals yet? And then re-explain what each of them is and have people check. Every time I've done that, someone has been able to claim an animal they missed. So I find you can kind of get distracted by the amount of options. Another thing that's important to this game is do not hoard your cards. This is a game about cycling the deck and spending things. Don't be afraid to compost. Don't hold on for that one card for that one perfect play that's almost not needed. Though there are certain cards that are hard to find, like colors on fauna cards that you do have to watch for. And what's awesome is it's small. Deanna probably can't see it, but they actually included on every single one of the end game scoring cards the percentage of the deck that has that card in it. And I think that's brilliant. All the animal cards have that. It's all on there. So if you get an end game scoring card, you put in like your ecosystem and it says 12%, expect to need to cycle the deck to find those. But if it says like 68%, go ahead and throw those cards. You're going to find more.
I missed that was even on there. So yeah, maybe it is really tiny.
It is.
I found that there's the two parts of balance. You're also building an engine with the colors that you want to do things across your tableau, right? And I find if you remember to do that, you forget the animals. If you remember the animals, you forget you're building an engine. I don't mean, that's what I've noticed people doing in general. I mean,
now, honestly, one of the things that is the best part of the game for me, and Sean called this out a bit earlier, so did Deanna, when we were talking about player counts, is that simultaneous play. And that, to me, is what bumps this above all other big deck tableau builders I've played. This is not a 5-hour game. The play is simultaneous. Like, you have something to do on every turn, so you're always invested. Sometimes it's quick. Like, there's not a lot of green abilities. When someone plants, you plant your card, you look, maybe you got 2 extra dirt, you're done. Some other times, though, you're like, oh, you played a red. Give me a bit. I got to do my engine here and work through it all. You have to pay attention, even if you're not the active player, and it makes the gameplay so quick. Like, when I learned this game, they said I sat down to a full game demo, and they're like, it's going to take about an hour. And I'm like, really? Only an hour? Yeah, about an hour. Like maybe a little more, depending on AP. Play with Gwen, it's going to take an extra 15 minutes. But it is so great. And yeah, there's sometimes downtime. Like, Sean had his Sprout engine going the one game we played there. And yeah, I had enough time to remember to grab my phone and take some pictures. But like, it's nothing compared to other big deck games where you're just waiting for everyone else to go, going, okay, can I have my turn? Can I have my turn? Can I have my turn?
Like, we played it with 5 with our AP prone kid and still clocked in at an hour and change.
Yeah. Now, another issue, small issue, potential issue, depending on who you are, where you live, is how much room the game takes up, especially at the full player count of 5. To me, the player boards are larger than they need to be. Yes, they're very clear, but there's a lot of wasted space on them. And even the central board could be smaller. But the real problem, honestly, is the 16 card tableau that everyone's building. A 4x4 set of cards takes up a lot of room. And I think every time we have set up this game to play, we've had to move the central market and stuff out of the way for people to build their full tableau. And then there's also the fact that Tableau kind of takes up more room in a way, because players can shift their cards around until they built for rows and columns and know exactly where their grid's going to be. So you need to have that room to be able to manipulate it as well.
So I think one of the reasons this game shows up on Board Game Geek as best at 2 to 3 is probably space. If you don't have this space, you don't want to try this at 5 players. Even though there isn't going to be a lot of downtime because of that simultaneous play aspect, it's definitely going to take up a chunk of space.
So yeah, for me, overall, I love Earth. It's a nice planet and it's a fantastic game. Like, I kind of knew this going in. Like, I knew I loved all like the core components, everything that's going into this game, right? There's asymmetry, love it. Tableau building, love it. Engine building, love it. A lead and follow mechanic, I'm actually a huge fan of. Race for the Galaxy was my #1 game for a long time, and it's still my most played game of all time. I love games where you're figuring out combos and synergies. I like the puzzle aspects. I just didn't expect it to be put together as well as it is in Earth. Like, as of right now, this is the best big deck engine builder I played. The best I played in a long time. And fans of the show who have been paying attention for years know other games in this genre that I have been a big fan of in the past. And there's no Jones theory happening here, but I am really digging Earth. Earth just does everything a bit better, and it's just more engaging and more fun. If you're like me and dig these style of games, these big deck engine builders about building synergies, you're going to have to add Earth to your collection. Like, you may not find it the best of the genre as I do currently, but you're going to love this game.
Now, one aspect that is turning off some people about this game is, while it's a big engine builder, it really is kind of a solo engine builder. Yes, you are doing things on other players' turns, but you're not interacting with or affecting other players. The only real interaction you have with other players is if you are in that race to score your animals first. Beyond that, you're on your own.
Now,
so if you don't have the advanced rules on, it's definitely multiplayer solitaire. Yeah.
Now, I will note there are cards, though, where you score based on what are in other players' tableaus, but they are few and far between. So there is some player interaction there, but you are no longer, there's no real direct way to influence another player in this game. There is no direct conflict. There's not even hate drafting because you're drawing from decks. But there are some cards that score, like based on the player who has the most, rainy terrain. If you know your opponents played that, you're going to pay attention and not play as much rainy terrain. But yes, compared to other games, including the big one about the Big Red Planet, there is less interaction. There's no carnivores eating your sprouts in this game.
I adored this game. Like, I straight up adored this game. It did Jones Theory, some other game that I'm not going to name. That's it. Everything you have said above, I'm like, yep, 2 thumbs up. Let's go.
So who should avoid Earth? Martians? No, people with small tables and not a lot of room to play games. And then people who prefer casual games, like very casual games. While this isn't meaty heavy, it's also not a gateway game. This is not something I would want to introduce my aunts and uncles to. You need to pay attention to what you're doing. You have to pay attention to what the other players are doing. And you will need to figure out combos and synergies to be able to play well. The game can be overwhelming at first, and there is some iconography to learn. All of that puts it a step above your gateway games and your family games. That said, I can totally see families enjoying that. And I don't know what the age limit is. I didn't look it up for this particular review, but I can definitely see our kids have been into this back when they were in their younger teens.
Yeah, it's 13 plus is the recommended. Yeah. Community says 12 plus. One of the things I find as a social game is because you are focused on your engine building so much, you may not be socially chatting as much because you are trying to make sure you are paying attention to a lot of things. And so there is that.
It's true. Well, I said it's good at 2. It might not be the best date night game because you're not really hanging out and chatting much.
Now, also, you don't have to take our word for Earth being great. In addition to other content creators loving Earth, it's been nominated for over 15 awards with multiple wins, including Golden Geek Medium Game of the Year, Meeple's Choice Award, and the UK Games Expo Best Board Game People's Choice and Judges Award.
Yeah, those are some big awards. Skipping the big German ones, that's the only thing I think it didn't win. Like that, the UK Games Expo Best Board Game. Like, come on, People's Choice and Judges? It's huge.
Yeah, like I said, it's good stuff. That's all we have to say about Earth, the game, not the planet. We like the planet too. Not that we've got another option.
Now, if you did enjoy this review, please consider tipping your bellhop at patreon.com/tabletop bellhop.
Who knew growing peas could be so much fun? We're about to review Genotype. Stick around and you might just learn something.
Genotype, a Mendelian genetics game, is an educational board game, don't run away, published by Genius Games that is a great worker placement, order fulfillment board game that also happens to teach you about genetics. It was designed by the team of John Covio, Paul Solomon, and Ian Zhang, and features artwork from Thomas Bogus and Amelia Sales.
Genotype plays 1 to 5 players in 2 hours or less, depending on the player count. The content is based on high school level biology, which makes the game good for anyone age 12 and up-ish. This is a pretty meaty game. Just because it could be used in classrooms does not mean it's simple.
Component-wise, Genotype is gorgeous. Fantastic artwork for the board, the player boards, and all of the cards. Clear iconography, wooden spades and abacus beads, and thick tiles. You also get a very clear rulebook with lots of examples and a very cool education guide. Check out all of this stuff through our Genotype unboxing video on YouTube.
So in Genotype, the players take on the role of assistants to Gregor Mendel, who are competing to collect data by breeding pea plants and looking at 4 key features of those plants: the seed shape, the flower color, the pod color, and the height. Punnett squares with dominant and recessive traits along with dice will determine which traits you'll be able to find each round. Hire assistants and upgrade your tools and lab and try to impress the friar.
Your pea plants are represented by cards, and each player gets 3 cards to start the game. They choose 1 to discard, 1 to play into one of their 2 available plots, and one to hold on to until later. They also get one random tool each. Genotype is a worker placement game where each player starts with 3 workers represented by spades.
Each of the game's 5 rounds starts with a working phase where players will place their workers at one time in turn. One at a time in turn. Players can garden, getting them a new plant card or tool, letting them harvest any full pea plant cards and then plant any cards from their hand into open plots. They can unlock a temporary dice slot used in the next step of the game.
Another option for your workers is to change the parent genes, which affects the punnet squares for one of the 4 traits, which changes the odds on the dice. They can choose to work first shift by giving the first pick at the dice. Now, the first player to do either of these for each of the 4 traits does get a bonus coin, which restocks at the start of each round.
Putting a worker on the second shift means that player is going to get second pick at the dice after all of the first shift players. Players can spend some coins and place a worker to set a phenotype research goal, and these award endgame points for collecting specific traits on the plants that you harvest at the end of the game.
You can go to the treasury to earn some coins, or spend coins at the university to validate a trait on one of your planted plants using a leaf token. Only plants with all traits validated can be harvested. Finally, you get new cards by visiting the nursery for plant cards and the tool shed for tool cards.
Tool cards give you abilities that break the game rules in some way. Flower pot gives you an extra plot, but can only be used once. The pollen brush lets you validate matching traits over multiple plants, only using 1 die. The rake lets you use dice as wild, and so on.
After everyone has used all the workers, you roll the dice in the plant breeding phase. The dice are placed onto a colorful grid that represents the various traits, with the value of each die being figured out by referencing the unit square for each trait.
Next, players draft these newly placed dice with players working the first shift, getting the first pick of each trait, then players working the second shift, getting their pick of any dice, and then the remaining picks made in player order.
Now, to take a die here, you have to have a planted plant with the trait matching the die. And what this represents thematically is you are spotting that trait. You're seeing it. You're looking for orange pea pods, and you're like, oh, sorry, yellow pods. And there I have a plant with yellow pods. So I'm going to take the yellow pod die and validate that I have witnessed that criteria. To do that, you put a leaf onto your plant. Now, you can't take a die, though, if you don't have a plant with that trait, or you can only hold 3 dice at the start of the game, so you can only take so many. If you don't have a die slot, you don't get the draft.
When rolling the dice, it's possible to end up with mutations. When you draft a mutation, you either earn a coin and don't validate any traits, or you draft a second die from the same area, which you can then count as wild.
Once everyone has drafted all the dice and marked off all the traits they can, you move to the research upgrade phase. Here, in reverse player order, players get to purchase 1 upgrade. This can be a new plot, a new dice slot, gaining an additional worker, up to 5, or hiring an assistant. Assistants offer very powerful permanent abilities like reducing the coin cost of every action, the ability to pay a coin to validate 1 trait per turn, making a single die wild, or more. Each time an upgrade is purchased, its cost goes up.
Now, at the end of these 3 phases, there's an end of round reset. The round tracker is moved up 1, with the game ending at the end of round 5. Note you skip the research phase that round because there's no point in upgrading because you're no longer playing. First player moves to the left. The upgrade costs all drop by 1, and all of the markets are refreshed: the tools, the assistants, the plants, etc.
At the end of the game, players total their points. Each harvested pea plant is worth points denoted on the card, with cards with more and rarer traits being worth more. Incomplete plants score 1 point per leaf. Unspent coins are worth a point each, and then players score any claimed research goals, and the player with the most points wins.
You can play Genotype solo, where you compete against a simulated opponent named Brother Johan, who uses a 9-card Atoma deck that determines his actions, dice picks, and upgrades. He has 3 difficulty levels. To determine his actions, you draw 2 cards. The first determines which action he will take, and the second determines the specifics of that action. There's also a special Atoma phase added before the dice drafting phase where he automatically validates traits, gets new plant cards, and more. As for the person playing, they play a totally normal game, and you compare your final score to Brother Johann.
All right, I get it. This all sounds rather dry and rather educational, but the thing everyone needs to know about this game is it's actually a really good worker placement order fulfillment game where your orders are the genotypes on the various plant cards. There's some aspects of engine building, and there's a bit of push your luck with the dice. This has a very tight economy where you never have enough actions, you never have enough money, and people always take the thing you wanted to carry out your plan, and I love it. This is a super tight game and becomes very tactical while still requiring you to stick to a long-term strategy and rewarding you for doing so. While you will have to adopt your plan, it's not often you'll have to start from scratch. You just have to figure out other ways to do what you want to do, and I really dig it. Oh, and it's educational, and you might learn something about genetics.
Yeah, I feel like when we were describing this one that it just sounds way more complex than it actually is. And it is a game where, yes, you might learn about genetics. The theme is going to help you remember how to play the game and understand the game and the game's flow, because the theme is not just pasted on it. It just really works with it to help the game run.
I mean, in essence, this is a contract fulfillment worker placement game with a genetic theme. There's nothing too shocking about it, although some people may be turned off by the randomness of dice.
Yeah. I don't know. Like personally, I actually did really well in biology. I don't know why. I actually considered continuing it in post-secondary. Maybe if I'd taken that path instead of computer science, I'd be sitting here talking genetics instead of board games. But I don't know. There's just something about the way my brain works and biology and Punnett squares. And like, I remembered all of this stuff, and I just sat down and I like opened this game and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. You can change the base pairs. That's so fantastic. Now I admit what I learned was all about fruit flies, but you know what? The P theme works and is a little less gross than talking about flies and their organs. So I got to say, there's probably a better theme than what I was taught. And the dice to me is a great part of this, because a big part of genetics is randomness, right? With dominant traits and recessive traits. And that's all represented by the dice. And I love the way that comes in. And I like the way you can modify the odds, that you can change the base pairs so that there's no chance of ever getting that recessive trait, which is a great way to increase the odds of getting what you want, which you can get to 100%. So like, yeah, if you're really upset about the dice, just manipulate the base pairs and make it so you're going to get what you want no matter what. But it's also a great way to deny the other players. If I notice everyone else is trying to collect white flowers, I can modify things so the odds of those coming up are almost negligible. Now, of course, there's also the tools and the assistants that will help with that. They can mitigate that. You can spend money to validate traits, and you can get assistants to do it. You can get tools that make the dice random. And honestly, for a game that does have dice, you actually have a surprising amount of control, which gets back to that. Your tactics will have to change, right? Like you might want to collect pea pods and honor up, but there's another way to get it.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to modify what's going on with those dice. And specifically, I like the way that you swap up what's on the chart so that when you roll, it does X or Y. And that becomes like a tug of war in the games that we were playing, where people are like, well, I'm going to make it dominant. No, I'm going to make it recessive. No, I'm making, back and forth on that one set. Yeah.
And then there's just something I like about the core loop of this game. Like you're putting out workers to collect stuff. You roll the dice, you draft the dice, you use that to validate traits, then you upgrade so you're better at doing it next time. Like there's just a nice flow here that fits in well with the theme and makes it easy to remember. And it's neat things that like you don't realize till you look at it. Like, yes, you're spending 2 coins to place a leaf to cover a thing, but like thematically, you're paying the university to do your research for you. And it makes sense that you can do that instead of doing it yourself. Like there's just neat things where the genetics is tied into the game.
And yeah, theming is nice, but also there's something about the assistants that you hire, just their abilities are neat. Yeah. Like just the way that they mechanically work in the game are cool.
Now, one thing to watch out for are research goals. The one trend I have seen in every game I played is that you can't ignore these. And if you let one player claim 3, they're probably going to win the game. just by owning them, even if they don't get a lot of cards that match them. They can be worth a lot of points at the end of the game and can surprise people who think they're doing really well until you get to that end game scoring. Every player, when playing this game, should be trying to claim at least one, if not two, which is now something I point out while teaching the game. Now, personally, my strategy has been to claim one early in the game because it gives me direction. It gives me something to go for. Based on my starting hand to 3 cards, I'll probably go, okay, I have 3 of the same trait. I'm going to try to go for whatever rounded P-seeds. So at least I claim one of them. So just don't overlook those. Note we had the same issue with Cytosis, the other game that we've reviewed from Genius Games, where people weren't claiming the goals. Be sure to claim the goals.
Yeah, I felt the same way as you on this. I ended up always wanting to claim one early on, so it just gave me some direction in the game.
Now, of course, the biggest disadvantage of this game is it's a game about growing peas where you learn about genetics. Like, how like, I don't know, I guess it's just as interesting as growing plants and farms and Agricola, right? But the thing is, Genius Games, their entire reason for existing is to publish fun educational games. But the fact it's educational does scare people away. Again, I just mentioned it, but like they won me over with Cytosis, a cell biology board game. That game really impressed me. Our entire family enjoyed it, as did some of our friends when we could get them to play it. Yes, it's educational. Yes, you might learn something. Yes, there's an entire book in the box about the actual science in the game to explain why you're doing these different things. And yeah, some of the terms and the actions you're taking are like, we're talking Punnett squares, but like to me, that's all a bonus. This is just a good game, like a really good game. This is a game I keep returning to because I enjoy the mechanics and the way it makes me think.
And I'm going to compare it to Cytosis because we played Cytosis. I dug it. I thought it was a pretty good game, and it was also educational. Cool, it's a win. Then we tried this, and I went, if we had tried them in the opposite order, I probably wouldn't have thought as much of Cytosis because this is just a better game. And they're both good, but I'm like, this is a really good game. You could throw the educational components out, and this is still a really good game, guys. Sit down. You want to try it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really makes Genotype stand out over top of Cytosis is the artwork. This is a beautiful game with a really nice style of art.
Even the back of the board is a picture of the Abbey where Mendel worked, and it's like just beautiful. I'm like, kind of want to mount the back of the board on my wall.
Yeah, the whole thing's just really polished looking. Like it's a nice looking game.
All right, I think we've driven in the fact that it's a fun educational game. But the other thing I do want to bring up, this is not a kid's game. Like, not all educational games for kids, and you say educational and people think grade school. This is for teens and adults. I would put this above medium weight and definitely a significant step above anything I would consider a kid's game, and probably above most games I consider a family game. Like, there's some real meat here, and it does require strategy, tactics, planning, and understanding the interactions of various things. And that's without throwing in the big fancy words.
Now, our youngest, who is now 15, does not tend to like heavier games or really strategic games. She'd rather be playing a party game, but she digs science. So the theme made her want to play this heavier game, which is kind of the reverse of, let's get everyone into this fun game and teach them some science on the side. Instead, we were able to slip in the heavier game because she was already intrigued by the theme. Theme matters, guys.
Yep.
While the box calls for 14 plus, the board game geek community says 12 plus. So if you've got a gamer family, you can probably get them involved a little sooner. And the weight is coming in at, indeed, just over medium weight at 2.76.
There you go. So yeah, if you like medium leaning on towards heavy, starting to move up that scale, if you like medium, bit above medium Euro games, check out Genotype, a Mendelian genetics game from Genius Games. Like, it's been a big hit for our family as well as some of the local gamers. It's just a really smooth worker placement game, order fulfillment game with what I found a very enjoyable core loop and flow. It also offers a challenging, not too fiddly solo mode.
Well, it's time to water the plants, so we need to get going. If you take away anything from this review, we hope it's not to overlook a game just because it may be educational. Long gone are the days when games meant to teach you something were at the expense of being fun.
Is there an educational game that you've enjoyed? If you have, we want to hear about it. You can comment wherever you found this review, or better yet, jump over to the Tabletop Bellhop Discord at discord.tabletopbellhop.com and start up a conversation there.
Well, that was the double bell.
That means our shift's coming to an end, and we're going to have to lock the lobby doors or drop the portcullis for our friend Ryan.
Before we start locking things down, let's take a moment to thank a selection of our Tabletop Bellhop Patreon patrons.
Thank you, Ron F.
Thank you, Papa Swick.
Brian Van Beek. Thanks, Brian.
William Fisher. Thank you.
Andrew Dacey. Thank you, Andrew.
Danielle and Owen Thomas. Thank you. Missed you tonight. Well, your first stop to finding us should be at tabletopbellhop.com, but you can find us all over the web as Tabletop Bellhop, one word, and on your podcatcher of choice as the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast.
We love answering your gaming and game night questions online, through email, and here on the podcast. You can always get questions to me by sending an email to questions@tabletopbellhop.com or go to our webpage and click on Ask the Bellhop. Even better, you can just hit us up on social media or join us while we're recording live. Actually, tonight's question comes from a previous Twitch stream.
Now, I know I said this at the top of the show, but we publish the most ridiculously detailed show notes with tons of links to all the things we mentioned. So if you're curious about something we talked about tonight or didn't quite catch the publisher or name of a game we mentioned, check out the show notes over on our website. You can find them. You can find the notes for this episode at tabletopbellhop.com/episode 275.
Now, for anyone who's catching this on Twitch before we've actually published the edited version, those actually don't go live until Tuesday when the actual podcast drops. So wait till Tuesday when the show drops, and then you can find those show notes. That's all for us tonight.
For the Tabletop Bellhop Gaming Podcast, I'm Sean.
I'm Deanna.
And I'm Mo.
Thank you.
And game on.